Hello and welcome to the Sonic Cinema podcast. My name is Brian Scuttle and thank you for joining me at www.sonic-cinema.com. Also, thank you to anybody subscribed to the Sonic Cinema Patreon at patreon.com/Sonic Cinema. Posted a couple of new things over there this past few weeks. I've got a sum up of the first chapter of my book coming up, as well as a brief audio scene that I actually did in college that I think people will enjoy. So that's patreon.com/Sonic Cinema. Thank you very much for anybody who's subscribing to that. I've been looking forward to this podcast for a few months now, ever since I realized that we could get this group of people together. And not surprisingly, given the subject matter, we have some previous members of the podcast in Ronnie Haynes, as well as Daniel Green. So that alone should tell you what the subject is. But I am so glad to be able to welcome for his first time on the Sonic Cinema podcast, but he's not he is a veteran of Sonic Cinema with the Yahoos with a Microphone commentaries we did back in the day. Please welcome David Miles.
Hey, y'all. I know there's going to be an intro.
If you want to imagine me playing The Boys Are Back in Town here, that would be perfectly good, because Ron, Dave, and I did the Yahoos with Microphone commentaries in 2003, going technically up till 2015. We've got a couple that unfortunately got lost, and a couple you'll actually be able to hear for the first time, at least excerpts of them on the Patreon. But today we are going to talk about Star Wars: The Last Jedi, which basically blew the Star Wars fandom into a million pieces in ways that I still am kind of baffled by. But part of the reason that was so exciting for me to have this lineup of Ron, Daniel, and Dave here for this podcast is because we basically have two people on each side of the spectrum. So hopefully we'll still end up friends at the end of this. Hopefully we'll still have all of our limbs and digits by the end of this. And hopefully we'll be speaking to one another after this. I think we will. I'm wanting this to be as...
I'm already not speaking to you, Brian.
I'm wanting this to be as fair to everybody's viewpoint as possible. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. The first thing I wanted to do, I've got a nice little list of sort of sections that I want to break this discussion down into. The first thing I want to do is allow everybody just a couple of minutes to sort of give a general overview on their personal feelings for The Last Jedi. I will go ahead and start. I saw it a couple of days before other people saw it because of the nature of my job, and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was absolutely beautiful. I thought it was brilliant what Rian Johnson did. I was in tears at the end of the movie. I did see that, Ron, by the way. I saw
well, I don't know what you're talking about.
I saw that out of the corner of my eye. I'm good with my peripheral vision. So that the long and short of it is, and we'll get into more specifics as we go along, I just thought it was an amazing movie. It's easily one of my favorite chapters in the Star Wars franchise. And with that, we'll actually go in reverse alphabetical order here. And so let me start with Dave, with giving, if he would give just a sort of general overview of how he feels about the movie.
Yeah, I saw it 2 or 3 times in the theater. I can't remember. But I thought I just remember being really overwhelmed by the technical aspects. I thought it was one of the best looking movies I've seen, and certainly the best looking Star Wars movie. But I definitely had issues with the story. I didn't feel quite as engaged. I definitely felt there were some frustrations just story wise. that the type of story that was being done has been done before, and it's been done better. And so I was like, how are we getting this big movie and this story that doesn't really quite seem to be up to the technical aspects of it? But anyway, I'm not one of those people that really hates the movie, but I am one of them that is just kind of disappointed by it.
Okay. So with that, we'll go to Ronnie Haynes.
Well, should we go like with someone who likes it next, and then someone who's
Well, we're going in reverse.
Yeah, I
alphabetical,
figure.
So
Okay,
you're next.
Okay,
And then
well,
Daniel will finish.
okay.
up.
Well, my initial thoughts on the movie are that I mean, I'm not going to be as eloquent as Dave, I don't think, but all I remember really is walking out of Force Awakens and just not being able to. I couldn't wait until the next chapter, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to wait 2 years, And I saw Force Awakens. I think 3 or 4 times in the theater. That's how much. That's just how much I loved it, and that's how much I was engaged by it, and I just thought JJ did a phenomenal job with, say what you will about it being a, copy, cut and paste of New Hope. I mean, those comparisons are clearly there, in spades, but it's like, but Force Awakens knew what kind of movie it was, and I'm going to try not to dwell too much on Force Awakens, even though I've mentioned about 10 times already when we're supposed to be talking about Last Jedi. But honestly, walking out of Last Jedi, the first time I saw it twice in the theater, and just not being that excited about what was going to come next. Just like thinking like, well, that was a movie, and like not feeling too much beyond that. I think there's like, I still to this day think there was like maybe 2 parts in the whole movie that felt like it was actually Star Wars to me, and then the rest of it did not feel at all anything like a Star Wars movie. So yeah, Dave's telling me to wrap it up, and that's okay. But yeah, my initial thoughts will, I think, come out as the podcast as the podcast happens. But again, I like Dave. I didn't hate the movie, but I was pretty disappointed by it. So with that being said, I think we'll give it over to Daniel for his initial thoughts.
So I saw it twice in theaters as well, only because I didn't have time to go see it more. But I honestly loved it. I thought it was a great movie. I think the thing that really happened was, for me, the beginning sequence there was like the greatest space battle I think we've seen in all of the Star Wars movies so far, both in terms of the choreography of it as well as the visual aspects of it. But I really enjoyed I think Rian Johnson just threw us in the water when the first sequence where you see Rey walk up to Luke and hand the lightsaber, and he looks at it, and then I think Rian Johnson there just said, "You guys, do you think you know everything? You think you know who Snoke is and who Rey is?" And then he just like Luke Skywalker threw the lightsaber back. That's exactly what Rian Johnson did too. Is you think you know Star Wars? You think you know what's going to come next based on 2 previous trilogies and what this movie should be being the second in the movie. And I'm just going to throw you guys a curveball, and you have no idea. And from that point on, I think the whole movie was like, you were just, to me, I was on the edge of my seat wondering like, what is next? And after several different sequences throughout the movie, you're still like, did that just happen? Like, is it what? And you're just left with, like, I'm left with what's going to happen in 9, like, because there's so many different stories and angles you can go with. And then obviously, with the passing of Carrie Fisher and how they did not write her off in this movie, which leaves a bigger question of like, what is next? But I think that the beginning was awesome in terms of it's Star Wars. Here's the first battle sequence. It blows you away. And then you meet Luke and Rey, and his first words are still nothing. He just throws a lightsaber over his shoulder. And that kind of just sets you up for the entire movie. You think you know it, and Rian Johnson proved everybody wrong. And you don't know it. And now you've got 2 sides of the story. You have people that love it, thinks it's the greatest Star Wars movie. And you have people that really hate it and think it's one of the worst Star Wars movies, both in terms of the story and where it's going. So
yeah,
I was all for it.
Okay, well, from those introductions, you'll obviously be able to see that the reason I liked having this pairing here, other than the fact that it was finally a chance to bring David in on the podcast, was because of the fact that two of us here really loved the movie, two of us here didn't. And it actually kind of brought to mind our first commentary for Yahoos with a Microphone when we did the Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, where Ron and I were on different sides of the spectrum, and Dave we jokingly brought in as sort of the person to make sure that we didn't kill each other during the record. But the thing that I love about Dave and bringing him in on, and the thing that I think the three of us have always been able to do, is really be able to, we each end up having different opinions on the movie, and we each, and with very few exceptions, we all have our respective issues with the movies. And so that's part of the reason why I was really excited to have Dave in here. So now that you know sort of generally how we all feel about the movie, I want to turn it over a little bit to Ron and Dave to sort of get their opinions on what they liked about the movie. Because I think it's safe to say that Daniel and I like basically everything about the movie. I mean, I'm sure there are things that we have issues with, certainly. But seeing as though Ron and Dave don't have the same affection for the movie as we do, I'm kind of curious as to what you guys have that you like about the movie that maybe we can find common ground on before we get into the specifics of the story and what Rian Johnson is doing with the movie.
Well, I'm glad you asked that, Brian. No, I was saying earlier in my introduction that there may be 2 or 3 moments that really genuinely, legitimately feel like Star Wars to me. Mm-hmm. One being, I think, what's the obvious one I think we all agree on is the scene with Yoda. Mm-hmm. The other one being that part towards the end when the Millennium Falcon's flying through the salt mines and they're playing that cue from New Hope.
Yeah.
When they're fighting off the TIE fighters after they've escaped the Death Star. Yeah. That Brian, I don't know if you remember, but you were sitting next to me in the theater when we first saw it, and I was applauding like a seal. I was like, It's like, yeah, it's Star Wars. But those are the only 2 scenes that legitimately felt like Star Wars to me. The rest of the movie didn't this thing. I know I need to focus on. The question is, what did I like? And I mean, the visual effects are beautiful. I watched it on your 4K TV just the other day and thought, oh my, this thing. I was watching it with the Rian Johnson commentary and thinking, and so that kind of gave me an opportunity to focus on the visuals, and the visuals are amazing. Yeah. The effects are beautiful. The John Williams score is although I do feel like a lot of the score was a little derivative of older score. There's only a couple scenes I really remember thinking, oh, that's some original music, like the Canto Bite scene. Yeah. But in general, the John Williams score is amazing. I do think it's I told you this the other day. I do think it's a competently directed movie. Mm-hmm. I think it's for the most part it's a well acted movie. Mm-hmm. It's like this you could tell this was made by people who cared about the product. Right. This isn't this wasn't made by people who are out of touch like the prequels were. It's like this was made by people that set out to make a competently made movie, and I recognize that every time I watch it. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, the movie just ended up not being my cup of tea.
Okay.
So
all right.
If I was to say that's basically what I have to say, that's basically my answer to that question. It's like what did I like, and that's
okay.
So, Dave, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I mean I can just echo a lot of what you said, Ron. And you too, Daniel. I mean, I really liked actually the space battle at the beginning. I thought that was fantastic. I was a little put off by The initial thing with what's his name, Hux.
Hux.
That initial exchange kind of. It felt. I mean, I know it was funny, and it was funny, and I did laugh.
Oh, the thing with Hux and Poe.
Yeah. But it
Like,
also
okay, I'll hold.
felt a little cheesy.
Tall, pasty guy.
But besides that, and I definitely think the movie was probably its best looking, although it was really great looking throughout during that space battle scene as well. And the score, yes, parts of it definitely did sound a little derivative, but I thought it was rocking the entire time, and when it needed to hit emotionally, it definitely did. I mean, the problem, even if you don't like the story for the movie, I think a lot of people have a problem because it's so well done, it's so well executed visually, it's so well acted, so
And directed.
And directed, yeah. So like Ron was saying, these are people who came in to make a very crisp blockbuster movie, right? And I mean, and it is. It just is,
Yeah.
So the technical aspects are definitely kind of my favorite parts. In terms of story, I'm not sure if there's any one particular story beat that really stuck out to me that I really liked. It was more like there's one, if they had done something, which we'll probably talk about later, maybe that would have been what I really liked, but they kind of missed an opportunity to do something. So there's not a particular story element that I liked, but in terms of everything else, the technical aspects, that's what I really liked.
Okay. Daniel, do you have anything to add before we really start getting to the nitty-gritty?
About things that I liked on it, or maybe since I loved it a lot, maybe a few things I didn't like about it.
Well, I mean, we can if there's something that doesn't necessarily have to do with some of the specifics. I mean, if there is something technical or that maybe just didn't really work for you.
So one of the things that I didn't like, and there's very, very few, but it was the first time I saw it was the sequence where Leia and the entire bridge get shot out in space. Right. And honestly, I mean, I love that part in terms of we finally got to see her use like the Force abilities. And reading the book too, like leading up to that scene in the book, like she's using the Force trying to find Luke in the sequence where she's in her chamber by herself before she goes to the bridge. She's starting to concentrate on what's going on around the ship before she's looking for her brother. And then she goes to the bridge once they pull out of hyperspace, and then the alarms go off because the First Order all of a sudden pops up. And then the sequence leading up to Kylo Ren, about to pull the trigger to destroy the bridge, and he doesn't. It's actually his wingmates that do. And so, like, from watching the movie and then even reading the book, like, I enjoy, like, getting that sensation of she's about to use the Force. Like, you could feel it going on. But what I didn't like was the visual aspect of once she is in space.
Yeah.
And she's kind of like sparkling, almost like a vampire, right?
Yeah.
And then her eyes open up.
It's not good.
No.
And then you do see her, like stick out her hand and like pull herself back into the ship. Yeah. Like, and we've seen the memes, Mary Poppins and stuff like that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I made a point of sharing every one of those that I found with you guys.
So, but like to me, like I got the feeling of she was going to use the Force. We're finally going to see her use the Force, and I felt that emotion there. But then they lost me with the visual side of it. Was really rough. I mean, you could clearly tell it was CG. It was poorly, in my mind, poorly executed CG. You could see the background was really not there.
Yeah,
and just her opening her eyes and sticking her arm out, and then like sucking herself back in. And not who's to say that she actually sucked herself back in and didn't bring the ship to her? Like, let's go with
That's
Starkiller here. I kind of enjoy that aspect, going back to Legends. But that was actually one of the big highlights that I did not like in the movie was, and I walked out of it telling my wife, I'm like, yeah, like that sequence, I can see so many fans being so upset with not only like how she lived in space and brought herself back in.
Right.
That's just a very controversial scene, period.
Yeah,
with a lot of people.
We're actually about to get to in the next.
Okay.
Couple.
Yeah. We talked about that specifically.
But the fact of the matter, the fact of the matter is, it's like I will say I do agree with you that the technical I'm with you, Daniel. I love that from an emotional standpoint because, like you, I'm excited about the fact that she's using the Force, but at the same time, from a technical standpoint, it is. And the thing is, the frustrating thing about it is, I don't know how they could have done better. I don't know what they could have done to do it better.
Should they have just killed Leia off?
Well, and we're going to get
Obviously,
to that.
I guess we're going to get to that.
So,
So,
let's actually go ahead and get to that because
Yeah.
the next topic I wanted to bring up is Luke and Leia, because they are the primary characters still held over from the original trilogy. You have Chewbacca, you have R2D2, you have C3PO.
wait, Chewbacca and R2D2 were in the movie? Sorry.
Fair enough. No, that's true. I do agree with you that Chewie kind of gets hosed in this movie.
As does R2, but I think that's more me
But
than you.
I feel like quality over quantity for R2D2. So I kind of disagree with
It's
you on
R2
that.
freaking D2.
But the stuff he does in the sequel
He has
trilogy
one goddamn
is
scene.
important.
I'm
It
just
is important. But
it bugs that bugs me. I'm sorry.
no, that's fine. But let's discuss Luke and Leia for a second. And let's actually start with Leia because obviously unfortunately this is the last film for Carrie Fisher because she passed away shortly after Rogue One came out.
Mm-hmm.
And as Ron has already alluded to, and Daniel has already alluded to, they didn't kill off the character. Rian Johnson kept her arc intact from what it was going to be from had she lived. And what we know from articles that have already come out as far as Episode 9 and what aftermath of her death is that she was supposed to have a significant role in Episode 9.
Mm-hmm.
So the question, and Ron posed a really good question, whether she should have died in that scene, whether Rian Johnson should have sort of, I don't know. I mean,
That's the thing. That's the thing I'm about. That's one of my issues about this movie is like it seems like it's what's the term where they're altering your perception of what's going to happen, but it seems like this movie all this movie ever did was just alter your expectations
right.
simply to alter your expectations, not for any reasons that are organic to the story.
Right.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Like this movie, like somewhat this movie seemed like it was one big dog and pony show of like one thing after another of what there's the other big elephant in the room when it comes to this stuff is the death of Snoke, and like
We'll get to.
I'm sure we'll get to, but like that's the thing, like this movie just seems like all it ever did was alter your expectations just simply for just
A shock factor.
yeah, a shock factor.
Okay.
Thank you. That's
what I will say as to your question as to whether it would have been better off to kill Leia in that moment. I think the problem that would have arisen with that is that there's so much in the second half. Say after Carrie Fisher died, Rian Johnson and Kathleen Kennedy and everybody agreed Leia should die at the end of this movie. And then, because let's be honest, they had already filmed the movie. They were already into post-production. John Williams was writing the score last December. The December Carrie Fisher died. So if you make that decision, well, that will be how she dies, and it's natural to the story. The problem is you have to reshoot everything else involving the character. And that's a significant amount of the second half of the movie.
Agreed.
So I don't think there's any way you couldn't, unless you were going to kill her off in that scene in the first place, there's no feasible way to really make that work while also not just completely altering the shape of the movie.
Yeah, I agree, and I think I think honestly, I think the right choice was made to keep her alive, and I honestly, I'm sure there's going to be people that have issues with it, but if they decide to have another actor play her, in the next movie, let's say, I'd be totally fine with that. Like I was already thinking, like that's actually totally fine with me. You know,
Yeah, they're
No,
already
no.
talking Meryl Streep.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
Well,
thank you.
that's a
No.
rumor.
No.
I have a feeling.
No, no,
Yeah, and I was actually
No.
I was actually surprised with my reaction to that. You know, I was like, really, Dave, you would be okay with that? I was like, yeah, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
and I'm you know, it's still kind of surreal for me to think I'd be okay with that. But
Yeah.
but yeah, but just because I talked about the visuals being so beautiful, you know, but just Mitch.
Well,
was saying,
there was a whole thing about like, will it be another actress? Let's think like it was established very early on that they weren't going to recreate her in the computer or anything.
Yeah.
like
right, and you know, I just wanted to say that I also felt that her scene where she got, you know, when she was flying back in Mary Poppins style was, you know, I'd mentioned this. The movie looks so beautiful, and you know that part does not.
Yeah. I mean,
But
that is but that is something we all agree on.
Yeah,
is
that's something we all agree
That does
on.
not work.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
visual does not
Yeah.
work.
So you know, they tried to recreate her in the computer, and that was that was what they were going to come up with. You know, please no. You know, but yeah, I think personally the correct choice was made to keep her alive, and personally I wouldn't mind someone else acting. You know, but I know that would be a big deal.
Yeah.
That would be a big deal.
And
I'm
the thing
still
is-
wrapping my head around that myself.
And the fact of the matter is, it's like I think that is with a character that iconic, with a character that much associated with that actor. I really don't think Lucasfilm would do that. I do think that they're going to that episode 9 is going to start with either acknowledging General Leia dying during the opening crawl, or we like start off at her funeral. I have a feeling it's going to be in the crawl, because I completely understand. Like Dave, I understand why they kept her alive, and especially when you consider the way Last Jedi ends. With basically, episode 9 is going to be like the big battle between the biggest battle yet between the resistance is going to get replenished with people around the galaxy, the First Order, it's basically going to be sort of the movie I always kind of hoped episode 2 felt like episode 2 should have been, which was like a big Clone Wars movie, except this one time it's going to be at the end of the series. And you're going to see this big battle, and Leia was going to be the general leading that battle. And because of the fact that so much of, I mean, and this is one thing I don't necessarily care for in the movie, it's like they hammer it home like 3 or 4 times with the idea of, you know, we're the spark that lights the hope of the rebellion. Poe says it I don't know how many times. And it's like, we get it. We understood it the first time. You don't need to keep saying it or find a different way to say it. I understand the sentiment. I understand why that was an important part, because that's part of the whole point, is the fact that the resistance is at its very weakest moment. Like, the resistance is this close to being snuffed out throughout the majority of that movie. So I like the idea that Leia was going to be basically the leader, still remain the leader of the resistance, and she was going to pass that on to the next generation. I have a feeling that's what we will have seen in episode 9 had Carrie Fisher lived, but with her death, I do think that they're probably going to acknowledge, I do think we're going to see a significant jump ahead in time of several years, probably, where J.J. Abrams is going to acknowledge in the crawl that General Leia has passed away. But the spirit of the resistance remains, and the resistance actually is continuing to go against the First Order.
So for me, I didn't feel emotionally connected like she should die in that sequence, in that scene. Like, I was watching, I was like, she can't die. This is too easy. The movie just started. She dies right now. This doesn't make any sense. Like, so I didn't have that emotional connect of, oh, this is it, she's dead. You know, obviously Akbar died, and people are up in arms about him dying and how it was like not serviceable to him. He's supposedly this heroic character that, truthfully, has less than a minute of airtime in the Return of the Jedi, anyways, and The Force Awakens combined. Granted, he's huge in the books and the expanded universe, but like, you know, you killed him off quick. That's cool. I felt like it was fine, but like her character couldn't die there. It just made no sense. You know, and to me, I thought, you know, obviously the movies revolved around, you know, the Resistance is the spark of hope. But to me, I actually felt the whole movie that it actually wasn't the Resistance was the spark of hope, that it was Leia was the Resistance. She was the spark of hope for the Resistance.
Yeah.
And her spark of hope was left in Luke. And like she's trying to find Luke to help bring him back into the fight to help even out the playing field. And so I didn't really get that the Resistance was ever a spark of hope. I just got that these two siblings, the Skywalker siblings of Leia and Luke, they were the spark. If these two characters died, then so did the Resistance.
Yeah.
And, you know, we'll probably get into Luke's character later. But, you know, obviously I enjoyed the fact that she did survive completely till the end of the movie. I wasn't so much shocked. As the movie progressed, I wasn't shocked anymore that they didn't kill her off yet. And then when she actually did survive at the end, you know, we see the end sequence of everybody in the Falcon, and she's there. And I was like, you know, this is good. I mean, I don't envy J.J. Abrams and how they're going to figure this part out. But I was okay with, you know, her living and surviving with it. And, you know, and I'm not for recasting it, honestly. To me, Carrie Fisher and Princess Leia is one person. It will always be one person. And the idea of trying to recast somebody to take on this mantle that she created and has filled for, you know, obviously 40 years at this point, like, I just don't think it's possible. I mean, and Meryl Streep is a great actor, and I could see her trying to be a Princess Leia, Carrie Fisher, but I don't think that it can be done. I think that Lucasfilms, I think that they are best in finding a way to write her out and write her out appropriately. You don't just say she died in a fight and that's it. You know, like something.
Or she died peacefully.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact of the matter is she doesn't have to die in a fight, but I mean, she could just die. And one theory I think I read recently was the idea that the time and space basically takes, because she ends up in a coma,
right?
When after she gets back to the ship, so I mean that's going to take years off of her life anyway. I mean, what we know about, and not to get into actual science with regards to Star Wars, because I feel like the people who have gotten into bashing how scientifically accurate Star Wars is, it's like, dude, you're watching a science fiction adventure. You're not gonna. There's no sound in space. You do realize that, and so you know what we do know from space is even if you aren't exposed, you know, the way she was, it's like the amount of time the more time you spend in space, the more time comes off of your life, and your body does degenerate. So the idea that her body would have after effects of that is legitimate. And I do think that that's something that gives them a way to write her out in a way that's respectful. And I think part of the reason why people probably brought up the fact that Carrie Fisher, or that the idea of Meryl Streep playing the role, was because of the fact that she played essentially Carrie Fisher in the movie based on Carrie Fisher's book Postcards from the Edge, which was about her life with her mother, Debbie Reynolds. And so I think that's probably part of the reason why people thought, oh, Meryl Streep could play Carrie Fisher.
Yeah.
It's like, which, okay, that's kind of fun, but at the same time, it's like, no, I'm with you, where it's like, I'm sure they'll figure out a way to write her off respectively, and they'll find a way to do episode 9 around that.
But because of this now, should they have kept Luke alive?
Well, but the thing is,
see, that's the things, like I don't Dave, sorry.
Before we get to Luke, because that's the next big topic, I will say, if Carrie Fisher were still alive, this conversation would not be happening.
Nope.
So the question is, if Carrie Fisher were still alive to film 9, would we be debating as much whether her character should have died in this movie? And my answer is no. I don't think we would be, because she would still be around for the next movie. So that's basically what I have to say. So let's go on to the other Skywalker sibling, and Luke. Luke Skywalker is my favorite movie character of all time. And the funny thing is, The Last Jedi kind of solidified that for me. And I know the quotes that Mark Hamill has had about the character, about the way he felt Rian Johnson wrote the character, and how he disagreed with basically everything Rian Johnson had Luke do. But the fact of the matter is, it's like the more you think about the breadcrumbs that Force Awakens gives you about Luke, the more sense it makes. I feel that he is the character that he is in Last Jedi.
I don't think Luke should have been such a recluse. You know what I mean? I don't think he should have. I don't think Luke could have been that removed from. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think he could have been. I don't think he should have been that removed a character, personally, and I don't think he should have been killed off either. But that's a whole other discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I do remember being drawn in by Mark Hamill's performance.
Yeah.
I do think it's a solid performance. Again, going back to when Dave and I were saying what we liked about the movie, again, the performances were good, and Mark Hamill's not being the exception.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like you hear him say this in the documentary that like he says he tells Rian Johnson, I fundamentally disagree with everything you every way you've interpreted this character. That being said, I'll give you 110% no matter what.
Yeah.
And he does, and that comes through in the performance. That comes through in that section of the movie with him and Ray.
Yeah.
And it's about as compelling as it can be, I think, with the limitations I think that were put on the character of Luke. That's the things, like I kind of went into this movie expecting like, oh, this is gonna be super compelling, just like it was with Yoda and Luke in Empire.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I thought like, oh, this is such a cool location for them to be training. I love the character of Ray. And I was so excited to see what they were going to be doing with Luke in this next chapter and everything like that. But I ended up ultimately being underwhelmed with that aspect of this section of the movie.
Okay.
Personally, I'm not sure how Dave feels about that stuff. I mean, again, like Luke, Mark Hamill is giving like there was even talk of like Mark Hamill even being nominated for this at one point before the movie even came out. Yeah. I was like, and I can kind of see, with the exception of towards the end, like when Luke faces down with Kylo Ren on Crate, I have some issues with that part. I have some issues with how Luke is handled in that scene, but for the most part, the training stuff it was interesting enough. But then at the exact same time, it wasn't Luke and Yoda in Empire,
right? By
any means. But anyway, I don't know if Dave has.
Yeah, I remember watching after Last Jedi. I remember watching. I don't even know why, but Star Wars clips on YouTube and seeing the Yoda Luke part from the original trilogy, and being like, this is it's just in every way, this is night and day better. In terms of just like it's like a real emotional moment that's being had. And Yoda's so totally compelling there, and it's just like this is awesome in comparison to what wasn't bad.
Exactly,
but I mean it was just nowhere near. Just even in terms of writing, it was nowhere near what it was in the original trilogy. That specific training sequence, and that's I almost feel sometimes that Rian Johnson, his ambition almost wasn't misplaced, but his skill level wasn't quite up to executing what he wanted to do. From an emotional standpoint, he definitely felt, for me, Zack Snyder-esque in ways, like let the past die, right? People always quote that, but it's like he's basically just trying to explain to you kind of what he's doing. Like that's kind of what Zack Snyder does. He kind of just hits you over the head and says, "This is why I'm doing this," in dialogue, right? And so, but yeah, just getting back to Luke, I think I think him being a recluse was fine. I do feel that it was maybe a little bit over the top, but only because it felt like he should have substantiated more, given more reason as to why he was so reclusive. He kind of did. Maybe for me it just wasn't explained that well. Maybe some different dialogue would have helped, but it felt over the top only because he didn't substantiate why he was there in a way that was well communicated to me, at least.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Here's the thing about Luke. Okay, in Force Awakens, Han Solo says he went off to find the Last Jedi temple, and then you meet up with him in the Last Jedi, and he's like, "I came here to die," and like that's such a drastic difference between what you expected of
Right.
what you expected and what you got.
Mm-hmm.
So again, there are, I think Dave and I do just have some, I think we have some legitimate issues with the way Luke's character was handled.
Yeah. I mean, and again, a lot of mine just focuses on the training scenes. I just hope there would be more. It would just be cooler. But but yeah. But Dan.
So for me, like, I view this. So we go into this training scene with Luke and Rey, and honestly, he says, I'll give you 3 reasons on why the Jedi should die. He never once said, I'm going to give you 3 reasons on how to make you a better Jedi or how to go out and defeat the darkness. Or his whole thing was, I'm going to teach you why the Jedi need to die. So to me, it wasn't, I actually didn't really view it as training. So I have a little bit different perspective because I loved the Luke and Yoda from Empire Strikes Back. And there's a lot of similarities between Yoda and Empire and Luke and The Last Jedi. They both are recluse. They both ran off. Obviously Yoda couldn't defeat the Sith, Darth Sidious, Emperor Palpatine, and he runs off into hiding. Kind of same thing where Luke had, obviously it's not that he couldn't defeat something. He went off into hiding. He was ashamed of what had happened, and then he also, he let Leia down. He let himself down. He let the New Republic down by again allowing the Sith to rise again. Because he saw in the future, and you can't quite stop the future, although the future is always in motion, so you don't really know what is true and what's not. But I got this was he was in a recluse because he was ashamed of what happened. He couldn't be there to stop it. He couldn't kill his own nephew right there. He had a moment where he thought he could, but he couldn't. So how is he going to stop his nephew now going into what's in the future? And so I think that he was going to look for the last temple. In The Force Awakens, Han says he went to go look for the first temple.
That's right. The first temple.
The first temple.
That's right.
But I think he was looking for the first temple to die, to be the last Jedi, to die at the first temple. So to me, the recluse there was great.
That's uplifting.
It had
that's such a sorry.
But no, I mean, to me, it wasn't really he was training Rey. He was teaching Rey on why the Jedi had to die.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing too is we only saw 2 of the training the lessons, not training but the lessons. The third lesson, which is in the deleted scenes, it's also in the book, was he told Rey that the caretakers of the island there were once a month they get attacked by these barbarians from across the sea, and so she sees this ship coming, and he's telling her this story. She's like, well, we have to do something. We have to go stop them. And he's like, no, because if you stop them now, they'll just come back in greater forces. Or you'd be here next month to stop them. She's like, but we just can't stand around and do nothing. And he's like, yes, we can. And so she's running down the hill and everything like that. You see in the deleted scenes, it's like a 10-minute segment. It's actually really well choreographed.
Yeah, I think don't they show some of those in like the TV spots for like when the movie first came out, like her running with a lightsaber.
Yeah. That's actually in the deleted scene.
Yeah.
So, so in that training, I think, and I kind of wish it was in the movie because it means a lot. Because if you think about it, so the entire prequels was Jedi running into battle to control to lead the clone armies, to defeat the bad guys, the separatists, trying to figure out who the Sith are. The whole time they're running into battle, but they're not thinking about the consequences of what are they doing. So yeah, they're going to defeat something here, but the separatists pop up over here. So then they run over here and they defeat the separatists here, but then they pop up over here. And then what happens is planets are people, cultures, and planets are leaving the Republic at the time to join the separatists because the Republic can't defeat them or can't protect them, but the separatists are. So it was just kind of this. The Jedi up to this point have just always run into battle, and Rey had the same mentality. Luke had the same mentality in the Empire. He left his training early to go save his friends on Cloud City because he saw them dying up there, right? And so he leaves his training early, and what happens? He loses his arm, right? and almost dies himself. And he just still doesn't save them. Han Solo got frozen carbonite and disappeared, right?
Yeah.
So he still didn't. All he did was lose a hand,
He
lose a
almost
friend.
died.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So
Really, I haven't seen the movie yet. Can you tell me more?
So it was kind of, I enjoyed that third lesson of, you can't run into battle, because are you going to be there tomorrow to still defend them? And that kind of brings on into 9 is, the good can't always win, because there's always going to be bad. You can't always stop the good all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a balance. I mean, there's always going to be a balance of, there's got to be enough good to repel enough bad, but there has to be enough bad to keep enough good.
Right.
So, it's a balancing act, and you can't just run into the battle all the time.
Well, that's one of the things that's one of the things I love about the way Rian Johnson wrote Luke in this movie, wrote his arc in this movie. Because he's actually still making the same mistakes he made in Empire. He's still looking ahead. He's still looking off to the horizon. He's not living in the now. Which is pop psychology in a way, but at the same time, it's very true to what that character has always been. He's always been, even with A New Hope, he's always looking forward to getting away from Lars and Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru. In Empire, he feels like he needs to help Han and Leia, not realizing that he's not ready to be able to do that. And he's not going to be able to do that. He almost dies. The Jedi are almost, like, he almost screws everything up. Like, the balance will never be put forth if he dies at Cloud City. And in Last Jedi, it boils down to the same thing. He thought that Kylo Ren's future was written. He thought he knew what Kylo Ren was going to do, and in a moment of weakness, like in Empire, he ran away. He basically almost killed his nephew, and through that moment where he was ready to, and Ben woke up at that moment, and it's all based on it's misreading of a situation. It's a misreading on Luke's part that he feels like Ben's future is already written, and it's a misreading on Ben's part to see that no, when he's woken up, Luke has already stayed his own hand. He's not going to kill Ben at that moment, but that's what Ben thinks. So everything happens at that moment. And yeah, it's like Han. The thing is, yeah, you brought up the fact that Han said, "Oh, a lot of people thought he went to the Jedi Temple." It's like, yeah, that's true, which he did, but they don't necessarily know the reason, or they don't say the reason. And the thing is, based on what we know of Luke, the fact that he separated the map from R2 to not have that one piece that is key to finding him. He wants to be left alone. Yeah, I was completely taken aback because I was expecting another scene like Yoda and Luke in Empire when Rey went to the island at the end, and you get that great moment of her trying to hand him the lightsaber, and then it's like that's what I was expecting with Last Jedi. That's not what I got, and the fact that I didn't get that. And the fact that in Last Jedi, Luke has the Jedi Order pegged. He realizes that arrogance has always brought down the Jedi. And there's always been a fundamental unbalance in the Force in any of these prequels, in any of these trilogies. In the prequels, there's an overabundance of light over darkness to the point where the Jedi don't even see the Sith coming. And in the original trilogy, the darkness is taken over the light. And so you have an unbalance there. With this trilogy, it's interesting. You're not really. It feels like the same sense, the same unbalances in the original trilogy, but is it really? I feel like it's still in flux with the Force. Whether the light side or the dark side is going to win is still up in the air with the sequel trilogy, and I think that's one of the interesting things that I love about what Last Jedi does, and I think it's really brought home in the lessons that Luke is imparting on Rey. Yeah. Anybody?
No. I'm down. I mean, I know we have a lot to get to, so I wanted to keep moving. But yeah, I mean, I just think that when I saw that Rian Johnson was doing the movie, and then I saw the end product, I was like, well, I mean, he's just in terms of story, I was like, he has to be better than this, right? And so like I kind of know that he is, but it just wasn't. And so some of the things that you were saying, it's like I'm sure that's where his mind was going, but it just wasn't communicated across very well. Like there's threads that he's drawing on. There's a depth to a story there, at least in his mind. But it just I felt he was a little self-indulgent, probably more than a little. Yeah. But it's also there's just something about his execution that just did not communicate it across to me and many other audience members. But I don't want to derail us. I know we have a lot to get to.
No, that's fine.
One thing I would say is because I could agree with you. Like there are moments where you're like, well, this doesn't make sense, or like, how do we get here? Again, going back to Leia, like, how did she live in space? Like, that's not possible. But I think if you look at it, and I know Ronnie and I have seen most of the deleted scenes and the commentary and the Jedi and the director, but I think there's a lot in there that will help some people. Because obviously at the end of every Star Wars movie, there's always questions. There's plot holes, there's issues, there's problems. And this one obviously is a big one in terms of you got so many people for it, against it, that this is also the largest one that is not George Lucas directed, where there's a ton of commentary. I mean, you literally get to watch the entire movie with Rian Johnson explaining why he did or what he did or how he came about certain sequences or aspects of the movie as you're watching the movie. So you're literally like watching Space Battle. Like, oh, this is kind of cool. I thought I was going to go with this here. And, the bombers are really cool. And I want to go with World War II sequence of dropping bombs. And so, like, you get that. So I feel like that if people do go watch, like, literally all the extras, the deleted scenes, the Jedi and the director commentary, as well as the Rian Johnson commentary while you watch the movie, that it'll help you a little bit more in his perspective of what he's trying to execute. And then, some of it still, I think there are still some flawed parts of what he wanted to execute versus what the end product did come out with. So that might help some people, and it still might just open up more cans of worms, if you will. So, but that's kind of my thing, is this is literally the largest Star Wars movie we had with all this extra commentary that was not George Lucas, like THX Special Edition.
Yeah.
30 minutes before the movie even starts, you get George Lucas of why he added all this stuff in, So
right.
But yeah, so definitely check out the deleted scenes and the extras, because there's a lot of information there too. Plus, read the book because it's good for you and it's great.
Ron, do you have anything further before we?
Well, I was just gonna say I love Daniel's enthusiasm for, like, because Brian, you and I are just as into that as Daniel appears to be, like, DVD extras.
Yeah.
Commentaries, and then Daniel goes on to, like, he recommends the book and everything. I love Daniel's enthusiasm for the EU. Like, I don't think there's a bigger fan in this room of the EU than Daniel. I don't think.
No, probably not.
Probably not.
I mean, even I know Dave has read several of the
not
books
nearly, but not nearly as many.
My older brother's more than I am.
Yeah, not to the extent.
Not nearly as many as Daniel, though, as I'm sure. That's the thing. But and this is a discussion I had with you, Brian, as after we had one of our group text discussions with Daniel about. Daniel's like, "Oh my God, if you just read the book, oh my God, seriously, if you just read the book."
Did you read the book?
Not yet.
But well, and I think one of the things that Ron is getting to, and one of the things that we talked about after that text discussion was the idea is, well, why should I feel like I have to read the book in order to fully understand the movie?
Yeah.
And I think I remember the first time I really felt that way, it wasn't even with a Star Wars property, it was actually with when the Matrix sequels were coming out.
Okay.
That's my brother's thing. It looks like exactly.
And you had the Animatrix, you had the video game, which had all these other layers and stuff like that to the universe. Yeah. It's like, why should I have to go through all these hoops just to understand a movie?
Yeah.
Like that's the thing, and it's like I would love to be able to read all of the books and stuff like that. I don't have.
I don't have the attention span.
No, I don't either. But no, that's true. I mean, I'm always much more of a movie guy, and it's been a while since I've really read a number of books in a row, and so, yeah. I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's like I love it even without having read the books, without having seen the deleted scenes. Although what you've said about both of those makes me even more curious to do that, because it does seem like there's context in there that probably will have helped the movie. Like what you were saying earlier about Leia before she goes on to the bridge before the bridge gets blown up. And it's like that would have been good lead in, if even the slightest bit of that had been added just as a little insert to the movie. In the movie, it's like that could have added to the weight of what Leia does after the bridge gets blown up.
Yeah, here's the thing with Leia and the Force is it's not established well enough. I don't know, like,
and that's what I'm getting at was if a scene like what
if
Daniel was talking about had been added,
right,
it probably would have given
it's some inkling had been given to me as a movie watcher. Not as just a book watcher or book reader, but like it's some inkling of or a hint of something having to do with Leia and the Force,
right,
had been given to me before that scene where that scene would have gone down a lot easier with me. The Leia, Leia in space scene, Leia using the Force. I mean, because now it's just because the Force.
The thing is, it's like but the thing is, it's like we have seen Luke and Leia, use the Force before, or at least been
not to the degree where she could save herself out in outer space, though. That's true. We have not seen her use the Force to that degree at all prior to when it comes out of nowhere.
That's absolutely
in Last Jedi.
That's absolutely true. The only time we've really seen it up until that point was when Luke is calling out to her at the end of Empire when he's hanging from the bomb of Cloud
and
City.
That did make sense in the context of that movie.
Yeah,
that made
it also hints at this deeper connection that Luke and Leia have.
But then we never hear about it or see about it ever again until Last Jedi, where it comes out of freaking nowhere.
No, that's not true because in Endor on Return of the Jedi, Han says to her, I'm sure Luke wasn't on that. She goes, he wasn't. I felt it. And he's like, well, I'll leave you two alone. He's like, it's not like that. He's my brother, right? So you got that. But you also got when Han died in The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
She felt it too. So you get little breadcrumbs of her feeling the Force or she has it, obviously. But you're right. We don't see it at that point in the context of that. And it is actually, there is a scene in The Last Jedi before you get to the bridge. She's in her chambers. And that's actually in the book. It's more elaborate. She's in her chambers, and that's what I was referring to. Is she's looking out into the ship. She can feel all the people around her. She can feel the universe, like all the other cultures and other people in the universe. She feels all these the entities and stuff. But she's looking for her brother, and that's the void. And so it's very there. It's there. It's just again, it wasn't executed well in terms of getting everybody established that she's using the Force trying to find her brother. We don't see that. We just see her in her quarters with her hand on her head, or her head, and then they come out of hyperspace, and then you just go to her slapping Poe on the bridge, and then the bridge blows up, and so it's definitely she's not using the Force in a large degree, but it's there. And again, we don't understand the Force. Like, let's just be honest. We think we know it, and then we complain. We're like, well, that doesn't make sense. You can't do that. Well, we don't know the Force. Like, it's everything. It's always moving in motion. It's literally in everybody. It's everything. So, again, it does kind of, it's one of those where it's hard to say, well, can she do that or can she not do that? Just like, can Luke really do a Force projection across the galaxy to trick his nephew? And we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
But again, we're trying to put understanding to something that we don't understand yet, that we've had 40 years of information in books and comics and movies, TV shows.
Yeah.
And we still honestly don't understand it. We still question, well, can you do that? Well,
Mhm.
and the answer is they can do whatever the hell they want to do. 'Cause this is Lucasfilms, and they're making billions of dollars with these movies. So,
Well, and I think one of the things that I think, and Rian Johnson mentions it in Director and the Jedi, which is the idea that he didn't want the Force to feel like a superpower,
right.
and he kind of felt like to a certain extent that's sort of what it had become,
Correct. Yeah.
and he sort of wanted to bring it back to something more mystical. Something
Well,
more
you know that scene where Leia's floating out in space? It looks like a superpower to me. I'm just,
Well,
or it's
and
or it's
that's-
executed as a super.
It's yes, and that's true, and that is a problem that we all agree the movie has from a
Okay.
technical standpoint, and from that scene that could have been done better.
Yeah.
I don't know how it could have done better, but it could have been done better. Before we get into a larger discussion of the Force, though, I will say, in terms of Luke and Leia, the one scene that they do share in this movie is really what broke me, in terms of crying during this movie, because it felt like not just a goodbye between the two characters, it felt like a goodbye between Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher, almost like they felt like they were never going to see each other.
And have you read that like Mark Hamill is basically considers himself done with these movies now?
Well, and the fact of the matter is, I have read that, and honestly, I
like-
get it. I kind of get it, because
Oh, no.
Harrison's not necessarily going to be in them anymore. Carrie's gone, and his character died at the end of Last Jedi. I get it.
Yeah,
I
I always felt
understand why.
like that these movies, like in The Force Awakens, I felt like, okay, we're gonna see all the main characters die, and then we're gonna maybe start something new, and I was totally fine with that. You know,
Mm.
that was always, for me. If that was always the plan, I thought that was a good plan. You know, and that they can just be done. I mean, Harrison Ford was already done. I was I was surprised they even got him back, right? But the only way they got him back was that they would kill him off, right? But yeah, so for me, like if that was the plan from the beginning, I thought that was the right plan to go with,
Mhm.
killing off all the main characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is, it doesn't surprise me that Mark Hamill has said that, and I get it.
Yeah.
I completely get it, because
Totally.
the people he started this journey with are basically gone.
Yeah.
Mm.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I mean, why?
I-
And his arc is kind of gone. I would like to see him come back as a Force Ghost in Episode 9.
I think we might see
But-
him for like a brief scene, you know,
Yeah.
kind of like Yoda. Yoda came back in the Last Jedi here. I think he'll come back for a brief scene.
Well, there's
Why would he come back? I mean, at this point in time, we don't even know what the movie's about, where it's going,
Yeah.
because the way it ends. But I have a feeling that he'll come back for just a short segment.
Yeah.
So
And I mean, and they have brought up the fact that it's like Yoda could be coming back to train Rey as well, for Episode 9, which I would be fine if that's how they go with it. I would be fine with that too. The fact of the matter is, no, it doesn't surprise me if Mark Hamill's said that, and it's like I feel like a lot of people have taken part of the reason Mark Hamill felt the need to apologize for what he'd said about Rian Johnson's script was the fact that people were using his words as justifications for their issues with the movie.
Mhm.
And it's like, oh, well, see, Mark Hamill said this about the movie, so it must be terrible. No, that's not why he said it. And
Right.
I get why he said it too.
Yeah, I mean, I think his first reaction was the most honest reaction,
Oh yeah,
right? But at the same time, if I was him, I wouldn't be wanting people to be using that to,
yeah.
especially if I was working for Disney.
No,
But yeah, so are we done with Luke and Leia for the moment?
I think we're well, and I mean we're
We're touching on other things. As well.
we're gonna touch a little bit more on that because of the fact because the next one is, let's talk about the nature of the Force in Last Jedi and in the franchise in general. We've already talked a lot about Leia's relationship with the Force and how it's been more about feeling something more than actually using it and for the sake of doing something. And yeah, the fact of the matter is, it's like it that is what makes that scene kind of the scene where she floats back to the bridge kind of ridiculous, because it's like we haven't really had a build up to that she's capable of those powers.
Exactly.
But at the same time, for me, as somebody who I was actually excited by it because of the fact that it's like for the first time I felt like it was a fulfillment of something that I didn't necessarily realize that I wanted, which is the idea of Leia using the Force. Now, yeah, I can admit from a technical standpoint, it doesn't look great, and it's not from a narrative standpoint. No, it's not entirely earned, but
No.
I still had an impact. It still had an impact on me. Still had a positive emotional impact on me.
Earned is a good way to put it. That's a great way to.
Well, that's the way you always put it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, it wasn't earned.
Well, exactly. Like
I hear that a lot from you.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean like how Wash's death in Serenity
Yes,
wasn't
yes,
earned
that was the first
Yes.
thought-
at
first thought in
all?
my mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think we could spend a lot of time talking about the Force in general. I read a lot of fantasy as well, and so magic systems are always a big deal there. And so how do you do magic systems? One of my favorite authors, Brandon Sanderson, he always comes from a scientific standpoint for his magic system, where things are very, very well defined. And then you have things like Game of Thrones or Wheel of Time, which is more of a there's still rules, but the author feels like they can definitely bend and flex things, and so and so I go back and forth. I wonder if there should be more rules, and I'm sure I haven't read a lot of the books, but I'm sure there's maybe been some people that have tried to establish something that feel like rules.
Yeah.
Or try to establish a little bit of a scientific basis. Even George Lucas has tried to do that, right? But yeah, part of it is like the writers can kind of do whatever they want to do, but as long as they have a feel for kind of what still fits, and it's a very kind of a gray area, in terms of like how far you can go with it's just magical, you can do anything, you can just blow up planets,
Yeah.
versus some sort of more basic interaction. So I think it's kind of what I want the writers and the directors to be governed by some sort of internal set of taste, if not rules. But I'm always excited to see them go different places, and I definitely, just speaking of the Leia moment, I definitely think that would have been better, and if they had established something beforehand. And I see that almost like not even against the Force itself. It's more about a storytelling choice, right? It was bad storytelling that led to that sort of a jarring moment, rather than she shouldn't have been able to do that with the Force, or the Force shouldn't have been able to keep her alive in space.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd have to say I agree with Dave on just about every point he made. No, seriously.
No, I mean
I'm not trying to get out of this thing. I'm not sure how much more I'll have to add
yeah.
to it, but I agree with Dave almost 100% on everything he just said. So
Yeah, so I also agree with Dave on that, and I'll actually go to a different scene where the Force is like, what happened? Luke dying, right? So we sit here, and so how does the Force work? It's supposed to keep you alive. You're supposed to be able to use it, gain power or strength or whatever it is that you need at the moment. And so, Luke uses himself as an image and everything like that, goes across the galaxy to Planet Crate, has interaction with Leia. Not only does he have interaction, he takes the dice from the Millennium Falcon that he saw earlier in the movie, hands it to her. It's in her hands physically there. She sees it, although there is a little bit of a kind of a smirk. So I wonder, even still today, did she know that was a Force projection, or did she know that he was really there? Because you'd think that she's, she can feel her brother, right? Mm-hmm. She should have been able to feel that he wasn't there, right? Right. So and there's a little bit of a smirk. If you watch it again, like when he hands her the dice, she has this little smirk, and the smirk is like, well, she has the dice that her husband had, or the smirk of Luke's not really here, but he's about to do something pretty awesome. And so it takes a lot of this energy for him to create this character, this illusion that he's there. Not only can she see him, everybody can see him. Even in C-3PO interacts with him, and Luke just smirks at him, keeps walking, and then he goes out and he sits there and he has this battle with Kylo Ren, Ben Solo. It's a very short battle, right?
Yeah.
But it's very technical. I mean, the dude's like driving around and ducking. And just barely getting cut in half. Stands up, does it again, and and then obviously Kylo Ren does slice through him, and nothing happens, and he puts his lightsaber in. But so we see this whole battle, and obviously he's literally using himself to be the decoy so everybody can escape. Right. So that way the spark can get away and live, right? and we also see another character development of Poe, and Poe's like, there's got to be a way out here, and Leia's like, why are you looking at me? Follow him. But the whole time there's this force. He's using it. So can he use the force to create this illusion? Obviously, we have that expanded universe that's in the Jedi code book that it was written.
Yeah.
And then he mysteriously just disappears. And, obviously we know he dies, but he mysteriously disappears. And so everybody's questioning, like, he shouldn't have died. He didn't need to die. But the reality is he spent a lot of energy. First off, he cut himself off from Force completely. He wasn't even there for the entire movie in the Force, as Ray mentioned. Like, you're cut off from the Force. I don't see you there. And all of a sudden, boom, he's back into the Force. So he's used a lot of energy to cut himself off. Now he's using a lot of energy to put himself back into it. So I felt like that his death, dying at the end, was justified, and it was a peaceful death too. Yeah. And Ray mentioned it to Leia, like, I felt him. He was at peace, right? And I think that was what we were intended to get the whole time, was that he obviously was not at peace. That's why he looked for the first Jedi Temple. He wanted to die. He's clearly not at peace with what he's done, with what's happening with Ben Solo. And then he's, back into it to help, create the decoy, and all the energy that was used to help sustain that image, that illusion, obviously has left him, and, the Force is leaving him, or he's leaving into the Force at this point. So, it's one of those, like, this is a different perspective of the Force. Obviously, we all agree about the Leia scene, and we didn't like it wasn't visually there, it wasn't quite justified. But this was another sequence where I thought it was an excellent use of the Force, and again, how we don't understand it, and we still don't. Yoda disappeared into the Force, and he comes back as a Force ghost. But Anakin Skywalker didn't disappear into the Force, but we see him as Force ghost, and Qui-Gon Jinn didn't disappear as a Force ghost, or didn't disappear into the Force, but we see him in the cartoons as a Force ghost. So, there's things, and we saw. Ben Kenobi, did he disappear into the Force or not?
Yes,
or did a lightsaber hit him? Well, so it's because the timing of it is the lightsaber hits him as he disappears, or because the lightsaber hit him, he disappears. So, there's always going to be that argument for a little bit. But so there's obviously there's we don't understand the Force per se, and I really liked how they used that of Luke, using himself as a decoy, exerting all his energy, the rest of his life, if you will, what he has left, to help them escape, so that way evil does not win on that day.
Right.
They live to fight another day.
And this is a big part of what I love about Luke's arc, is the fact that he is cut off from the Force. The fact that he did actually just cut himself out from the Force. That's something that's always been fascinating to me. Not necessarily in thinking about Luke's character, but in thinking about other characters in the Star Wars universe that we've seen abandon the Jedi Order. Thinking specifically of Ahsoka Tano near the end of the Clone Wars series. And one of the things that I love about what we see, the projection that we see of Luke at the end, is that it's the parallel to Obi-Wan at the end of A New Hope. The whole point of that fight with Darth Vader that Obi-Wan is having at the end of A New Hope is so everybody else can get away. So he's sacrificing himself for everybody else. And Luke, at the end of this movie, is doing the exact same thing. He's doing it in a different way. He's doing it in the best way for him that he can be at peace with.
Escape is not his plan. I must face him alone.
and one of the things that I think that the thing that I love about the way this movie approaches the Force is the fact that it does bring it back to a spiritual component, it does bring it back to a mystical component that got lost with the prequels and the idea of midi-chlorians and all that stuff. And the fact that the whole idea that anybody can be force sensitive. You don't have to be a trained and cloth Jedi to be force sensitive, and you don't have to have the blood of a Jedi. You don't have to be related to a Jedi or anybody, a force user, a known force user, to be able to feel this force. And in that way, that's where the aspect of the Jedi religion comes into play. The idea of religions existing around the Force with the Jedi and the Sith. And that's one of the things that I love about this movie is that it really does bring it back. And I love the a lot of people have problems with the humor and stuff like that in the scenes with Luke and Rey, and I get that. It's very disarming. Some of it works, some of it doesn't. Every time I saw the first scene where he has her on the rock and he has her reach out and she literally reaches out, like, I absolutely laugh at that, because it's like, and he says, it's like, yeah, everything you know about the Force is wrong. And the whole idea is, it's like, you don't know about the Force. And it's like, let me tell you what the Force is. And he goes back to what Obi-Wan and Yoda taught him about the Force. And it's like, it's not just about wielding laser swords. It's not just about moving
Lifting
rocks
rocks
and all of that stuff. It's about an energy that connects everything in the universe. And I feel like that's one of the things that that's one of the things that this movie brought back to the idea of the Force, and that's one of the things that I love about it. With this section, we do have to mention, in addition to the huge amount of energy and the projection that Luke brings of himself at the end to face off against Kylo Ren, there's this whole dialogue and interaction that goes on between Kylo Ren and Rey throughout the movie.
Oh yeah.
That Snoke is initiating using the Force, but is feeding off of them and feeding off of their feelings about one another. And that's one of the it goes to one of the things that I think that is important about it, is that it's bringing new ideas to our understanding of the Force that we didn't necessarily have before. And I think there are other moments that in the cartoons and stuff like that, and I'm sure there's some in the books that probably have similar ideas to what Rey and Kylo Ren go through in this movie, as far as the connection and the interactions they have. But I can't really think of any right now.
Yeah, in the book, I mean, there's in the expanded universe, obviously now that's the legend stuff. There's a couple moments of it, but there's not many. And the only one in particular that comes in mind is in the expanded universe, Han and Leia have 3 kids, and their youngest kid is Anakin Solo, and his best friend, her name is Tahari, and they have a connection like this. But they're both Jedi. They're both trained Jedi. Tahari ends up kind of falling to the dark side temporarily, and then she comes back. But that's the only one that I can think of in the books, honestly. And it's not drawn out in near as much detail as the Rey and Ben Solo of the movie Last Jedi. So that's the only one I can come up with that I know of.
Any other thoughts on that?
Not at this point in time, no.
Okay. Well, in that case, let's move on to Supreme Leader Snoke. Easily one of the most controversial decisions, I think, safe to say, in The Last Jedi, which is the idea that we don't really learn much of anything about him, and he is summarily executed by Kylo Ren. And so we may never learn anything about him. I do know that they do expand on him in the book, don't they?
Yeah, they do expand a little bit on him in the book itself, The Last Jedi, as well as there's mention of a leader in the end of the Aftermath trilogy, which you don't know who it is until we meet Snoke. And it's still only assumed at this point that the leader is Snoke, but I think it's safe to say that it is. But yeah, there's as a matter of fact, the scene where Rey and Ben, Kylo Ren, are walking into his chambers. That before that sequence, there's a brief kind of couple pages about his past, and his past is the whole thing of the Empire. Emperor Palpatine last thing was if he died, that the entire Empire would completely collapse, and that's where the Aftermath trilogy kind of comes in. Is he designed it that if the Empire ever fell, if he failed, if Darth Vader ever failed, that the entire Empire would completely fall as well, and then the First Order would be reborn, and that's kind of where Jakku comes in this. And Supreme Leader Snoke is like, the Emperor didn't see that he would be the leader of the First Order. That is this guy that kind of comes from nowhere, and we still know where he comes from, but just this guy of how he would kind of stumble upon it and take it by the reins and run with it. And that's exactly what happened. That's literally like all that we know, and that's what he's done is somehow this dude named Snoke is the Supreme Leader of the entire First Order. Where did he come from? Where's his background? We still don't know. But it is mentioned that it was complete shock that this guy would come and take over this entire thing that the Emperor had designed to kill off the Empire to be reborn into the First Order. So, I reserve the right that I am excited that they didn't have him, that they killed him off, because that's what books are for, to elaborate on where this stuff came from. And obviously, as you guys know, I love books, but I felt like it was a great that he needed to die, because his character was there to provoke Ben Solo, Kylo Ren, into developing into an evil person. And we've got this character now that is truly strong in the Force because he killed Snoke. We saw how powerful Snoke was, being able to control Rey and bring her forward, and mind control her and get what he needs, and and she runs after him with Kylo Ren's lightsaber, and he just kind of flicks her like she's a fly and she falls off. So he's clearly strong. He's able to pull down Hux as a projectionist on a different Star Destroyer, just like Darth Vader could choke somebody from a different Star Destroyer. But his whole character is to really just help develop Kylo Ren into this bad person, and like really just develop him into. He's supposed to be bad, and we still see that Kylo Ren is not bad. I mean, he has moments of weakness where he can't kill his mom, he could kill his dad, stuff like that. But I enjoyed that, finally at the pinnacle, Kylo Ren kills him, so Kylo Ren now is the bad guy, like really strong in the Force, but he was also trying to get Rey on his side, which obviously did not work out. And so it was one of those that his character needed to die. I don't feel like we need to know more about him. You can go argue about Emperor Palpatine, it's just all of a sudden in Empire Strikes Back, here's this guy, Emperor Palpatine, that controls Darth Vader. Well, where did he come from? Who is he? And we don't have any of that at all until the prequels come around, which are terrible. And so we had an entire trilogy to develop who is Emperor Palpatine. So we're not going to have a trilogy to develop who is General Snoke or Supreme Leader Snoke. We don't need that. His character's so small and has such a small role in the overall plot so far of what we got in the movie. But his character is there to develop Kylo Ren, who is the main protagonist of this new trilogy. So I was okay with the way he died, and I like that he was tricked. He's so strong in the Force, he thinks that he can see that Kylo Ren is going to strike down his enemy, and which he did. His enemy though was Snoke. So it was kind of again the Force being you think but you don't know it, because Snoke thought that Kylo Ren was going to strike down his enemy, which we thought was Rey, which was not true. So,
Ron, you have something?
I don't know. I mean, I have my own issues with that scene where Snoke is killed off, very unceremoniously, because it's like I was saying earlier, this movie just seems to want to subvert your expectations just simply for the sake of subverting your expectations and not doing it in a way that feels earned or organic. I'm sorry. I was just like,
I was like, after he's gonna say earned, he's gonna say organic. I was waiting on organic. I thought organic was gonna be first this time, but
Yeah.
Dave, you're lucky you're on my side. No, that's the thing. here's I get where Daniel's coming from. I can appreciate his arguments. I can appreciate where Daniel's coming from, but I just, again, it just feels like it was handled so in such a clunky way that it didn't make sense to the story.
Right, right. No, yeah, and I mean, yeah, I mean, I think for me, the more I think about it, just Zack Snyder just keeps coming up. It's just, you know, when Zack Snyder used to be a guy that I thought really, you know, had potential. I think he still does. You know, when you see his movies, you're disappointed. And then when you hear him talk about it, though, you're like, oh, well, you know, that all kind of makes sense. It's just, you know, he couldn't bring it to screen the way that it needed to be. And so it's just, you know, it's just the skill set doesn't match the ambition. I think in some cases. And I just kind of I get the same feeling here. Yeah, again, you know, I didn't need Snoke to be in another Star Wars movie. You know, it's fine that they killed him off. Definitely felt like it was, you know, just transparent. You know, in the way that was happening, and it was more for a shock value than
exactly.
I mean,
Thank you.
You know, it just wasn't done. You know, in a way that felt organic. You know, and so it's fine. You know, story wise, again, needed to die, but man,
Yeah.
you know, I wish it could have been done a little bit better. Yeah, you know.
Were you wanting to see an old man run around with a lightsaber though, or what are we looking
no, yeah, and you know, and
What's up with his outfit, by the way?
Yeah, that's what I was curious about. It's like
with this Hugh Hefner thing he's got going on.
Because we did have an old guy with a lightsaber in the last prequel movie.
Yeah, Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
With Darth
you know,
Sidious, yeah.
I mean, it wasn't hideous, but you know, was I didn't necessarily need to see
It's
that again.
treason.
But yeah, I mean, that's part of when we have the two sides. You know, part of it's like, well, what did you want to see? Well, you know, I don't know, but you know, I'm paying to see, you know, I'm supposedly a master storyteller, you know, in you know, talking about, you know, a big property, right? And you know, I didn't necessarily get what I paid for. But yeah.
Thank you, Dave.
No, that and the thing is, it's like I certainly understand
Counterpoint.
I certainly understand where both of you guys are coming from. I would I mean all three of you, I certainly understand where you're coming from. I will say that I do feel like Snoke's death and the way it happens, I feel like fits into the theme. I do think there's a lot of arrogance when it comes to people's ideas of the Force in this movie, especially when it comes to Snoke and Luke. I think that's a parallel idea that is being paid off because Snoke thinks that Kylo and it's about Kylo Ren. Because Luke thinks that Kylo Ren's future is already made, so he's going to kill him. Snoke thinks Kylo Ren's decision is made, but he doesn't realize that Kylo Ren's decision is to kill Snoke. And so I think there's an arrogance that comes from people who think they are who see themselves as sort of larger than life, because at the same time when Luke is running, you know, Luke mentions that it's like, oh, I was Luke Skywalker, Jedi Knight, and leader, you know, destroyer of the dark side, and it's like he bought into the myth about himself, and Snoke is kind of buying into his own ideas of himself as this powerful character similar to what Palpatine was, but in fact he's just as blinded by his arrogance in the future and how he sees the future as Luke is. And so, and one of the key points of dialogue that I've felt whenever I've seen the past couple of times I've seen Last Jedi is earlier when after Hux is told Snoke about being able to track through light space, Kylo Ren is coming into the throne room, and Snoke is saying, "Give." It's something about giving a. It's something about giving a wild animal like it. It's I can't remember what the exact line is.
He was referring to like, do you want to know why I keep a low life around or something? Is because if you mold them properly, it's a powerful, sharp tool is what he's referring to.
Yeah.
So.
And we think we almost, and to a certain extent, in that moment, based on what we know of that moment, we think he's talking about Hux, but he's also talking about Kylo Ren and how he sees Kylo Ren. That's one of the things that I think is interesting. It's like, I don't need to know more about Snoke. I thought I did. I like the idea before we started seeing ads for Last Jedi, before more started to come out about the movie, I was actually hoping that we would get sort of parallel stories of Luke training Rey and Snoke training Kylo Ren, and that's sort of how the structure would happen.
I remember thinking.
That would be a really cool idea.
Mm-hmm.
It's not what I got, and yes, I'll admit I'm a little disappointed by it, but I ultimately not disappointed by what you got. In the end, I feel like, Snoke. I will say that ultimately the end game of having the character of Snoke in there is to make Kylo Ren the powerful antagonist that he needs to be for the remainder of the franchise, the series, the trilogy. So that's sort of where I view Snoke's place in the story. After that, let's talk. We've already touched on some of the themes of the movie, and we've already talked about some of the ideas of the movie. Let's go ahead and we haven't really touched on any of the other characters. We basically been dealing with Luke, Leia, Kylo Ren, Rey, and Snoke, and Luke, and we haven't really touched on any of the other characters. Let me open the floor, because the next section we have, we'll talk more about Finn and Rose, because it's the main thing that they have in the movie. Let's talk a little bit about Poe Dameron and his arc in the movie. I've had some fascinating discussions with people on the movie, and one of the things that people seem to feel about Poe is that his character sort of takes a step back from where he was in Force Awakens.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily feel that. I feel like his character is basically the same character that we saw at the end of Force Awakens. He was a hotshot pilot. He was good at what he did, but I never really got the feel that he was established much as a leader. I always felt like he was just he was a pilot, and he didn't really, he did what he did well, and he didn't really lead people to be better. And I think that's one of the things that the opening sequence in the movie really starts to hit home, especially with Leia's reaction to what he's done, is the idea that he's not a leader, that he thinks he's a leader, and he equates heroism with leadership. And a big part of his arc throughout the movie is what does that mean for how does he get from being just a hotshot hero to being an actual leader that Leia can say at the end? It's like, well, follow him. Why are you looking at me? And I don't feel like the characterization of Poe's necessarily taken a step back. I will say I do think Rian Johnson amplified his persona in Force Awakens to where he's kind of more obnoxious than he was in Force Awakens, but I feel like that ultimately had a thematic point to the movie as well.
Go Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, no, yeah, I think amplified is a good word to use there, Brian. I think the amplification of his personality was probably pretty jarring for people.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, you know, so maybe the complaint that it's a regression is a little bit more of the jarring plus some of the obnoxiousness, you know, and makes it feel as if it's a regression there. But yeah, you know, I think for me, his arc was probably the most transparent of the arcs. You kind of knew where he was going to end up at the end of the movie based off of kind of where he started. You know, I think he has a lot of blood on his hands by the end of it.
Yeah.
You know, and so I'm not entirely sure about that sort of character story choice. But you know, the whole movie felt a lot more contained, you know, than like a sort of a big,
Yeah.
you know, sort of space battle and jumping out everywhere and, you know, and that sort of thing. So and so it kind of, so Poe, you know, at the same time when he was kind of obnoxious in his personality, he almost kind of didn't feel like he had a whole lot to do during the movie. You know,
Yeah.
just I don't know. I just kind of did. I kind of felt like he did more and was more in the Force Awakens. But yeah. So you know, I think the actor did a good job. But
Oscar Isaac, yeah.
yes. But I don't think you know, his story didn't, his arc really didn't do anything for me. It was not typical, but you know, not necessarily surprising. And just because you asked about characters, I just want to knock out, like, what's his name, Benicio del Toro.
Yeah, which
yeah.
we'll get to.
We'll get to him. Okay.
We'll get to
JD.
his character next.
Okay.
JD.
Yeah.
So yeah.
DJ.
Yeah.
Yeah. My bad.
Which okay, we'll get to him.
All right, yeah.
We'll get to
I mean, I don't have much to say, but yeah, I don't know if you want to knock out all the characters at once. But so
Yeah.
anyway, someone else can go.
I don't know. You'll edit out all these long silences. Won't
Oh
you,
yeah.
Ryan? Okay.
I'll
all
work
right.
on all of this
Yeah.
in editing.
Thanks. Okay. Appreciate that. I don't know. When that's the thing. When I think of Poe, I think speaking of, like, you want to knock out another, you want to kill two characters with one stone. Whenever you know, I think of Poe in Last Jedi, I just think of the mess that is Poe and Admiral Holdo, the Laura Dern character.
Yeah.
That was gonna be the other character that I brought up.
I was gonna say, like, we could almost kind of like combine them two into
Yeah.
one conversation.
Yeah,
I think.
Totally.
Because they both are central to the same arc.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's absolutely true.
Yes.
You know, and that's the thing. It's like, it does strike me as odd. It like it struck a lot of people that, well, she wouldn't just tell people what's going on.
Yeah.
Especially like this commander type top pilot dude. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, it's really.
But the fact of the matter is, it's like I do think, and this is where it makes sense that they sort of amplified his arrogance and his feeling of himself as a hero who, you know, and equating heroism to leadership, is the fact that it's like he basically just decimated their fighting force in this stunt that he pulled at the beginning of the movie. And so has he earned the trust of somebody like Holdo to be told what's going on?
Yeah, that feels like a stretch.
I mean, but the fact of the matter is,
I feel you
not that
there.
much of a stretch, I don't think.
Yeah, for you, but I feel you. I feel
I
you.
don't think it's that much of a stretch. I mean, I do think that, you know, there's a certain, he lost a lot of trust among like Leia, among other people in the Resistance. I mean, so I do think that he had to earn back that trust, and he wasn't really doing it. So it kind of makes it is still hard to imagine that, like, she would keep that plan secret for as long as she did. But at the same time, I kind of feel like I understand why she did and why they did. And part of it is plot mechanics. Part of it is just natural plot mechanics of a movie, because if you have this, if break it too early, well, this is what our plan really is. You're diffusing a lot of the tension
Right.
in the movie, and I think that's and so I do think that's perv. I think it's not just from a thematic standpoint, from a storytelling standpoint. Yeah, I understand why it doesn't make sense, but from a simple plot narration standpoint, I understand why they did it.
Right, and I'm hoping it's not just a simple plot narration thing, because that would be kind of cheap in my mind. But is the book? Does that provide any more context? No, because it's a very frustrating thing when you're watching the movie. You're just like, I mean, people have already died. More people are dying. Why not just talk it out? You know.
I know it does get to the point where it
because
feels
talking ever got anywhere. I mean, actually in the book, there's actually not a lot that's more elaborated on this. I mean, so honestly, and I know we're gonna get to a minute, but there's a lot more elaboration on the Canto Bite scene, which I know there's a lot of issues there for some people. But I think kind of what Brian was saying, that is if you tell them too early, here's what the plan is. Well, then you have character development elsewhere that gets ruined, because obviously we're gonna get to Rose and Finn, but there's huge character development there in Canto Bight. So if Holdo tells, here's what we're doing, we're trying to get closer to the planet so we can jump in these ships. We're gonna go in these ships that are decoyed through bafflers, which are created in another book, which is another Cobalt Squadron. Actually, you understand how the small shuttles were able to escape detection originally is through bafflers that Rose creates. But if she says, hey, we're leaving. We're getting closer to the planet, so we can jump in these shuttles, so we can shuttle down to the planet. Meanwhile, our last cruiser, the Raidus, is going to go off in this direction here, and they're going to follow us, and everybody's going to be great. Then Poe would be like, hey, Rose, hey, Finn, can you come back now? Never mind, we're under control. I screwed up.
Yeah.
You ruined that character development there. So, and I agree that while he did blow up the Dreadnought at the beginning, there was so much blood on his hands with that because he didn't follow Leia. They got everybody off the planet safe.
Right.
So literally all these the 6 bombers died for absolutely no reason.
Right.
They blew up a big ship, right? But how many more big ships do they have?
Right.
A ton.
Yeah.
So you blow up one ship, but you lose your entire bombing squadron. So you lost the heart of what can destroy the ships. Not only that, you lose half of the starfighters, the A-wings and X-wings.
Right.
So there's a lot of blood on his hands. So honestly, he got slapped in the face for good reason. He literally lost over half of their fighting force to blow up one big ship, but puny ship in the overall theme of the movie.
Right.
I mean, it's they didn't trust him. I mean, he completely went against what they were saying, lost their trust. Is he a hotshot pilot? Of course he is. Like I feel like there's a lot of Han Solo mixed with Luke Skywalker kind of in this character. Yeah. Han Solo is like, I'm going to do it my way because my way is the right way. Even if it is the wrong way, it's still the right way.
Right. He's
got that attitude, but he's an excellent pilot like Luke. Granted, Luke has the Force, and that's how he's kind of a good pilot. But you have this hot shot mentality of I can jump in a starship and I can blow up anything and we're going to win the day. And he did. He jumped in a starship. He blew up a dreadnought. They won the day, but they lost half their fleet. Yeah. So it goes back to, he didn't have the respect that, because he lost it. He doesn't have the trust because he lost it. So there's a lot of character development on him. It's actually us learning about how bad of a person he is, and then trying to also create, here's how leaders are formed. There's a reason why you're supposed to listen to the people above you because they know what's best. And so there was no point telling him what they were doing or why they were doing it. And so meanwhile, again, him not having a good character is he sends Rose and Finn to Canto Bight to get a code breaker to, basically be able to cut off that switch so they can go in hyperspace. So, I think that kind of...
And he thinks he's helping, but at the same time, he's screwing them even further because if he doesn't do that, the First Order doesn't catch wind of what the plan actually is. Right. When they're telling Rose and Finn later. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's one of those things where, exactly. I mean, he's a hero he is a hero in what he does in an X-wing, but he's not a leader. Right. He doesn't really understand what it means to lead. He doesn't understand what it means to.
But when you really think about it,
responsible for other people's lives. So.
When you really think about it, though, when you add the whole Canto Bight subplot to this, does that not just make this movie even more of a mess than it already was?
Okay, well, let's go ahead and...
Because I was gonna,
let's go ahead and start talking about Canto Bight.
Because I was gonna say, first of all, the audience doesn't know why Holdo's doing what she's doing,
Right.
and then you got Poe thinking like, oh, I'll send Finn and Rose to Canto Bight, and that ends up going absolutely nowhere.
Well,
and then we realize, when we get back and find out what Holdo's really up to, it really goes nowhere if you really think about it. I mean, do you understand where I'm coming from?
I absolutely understand.
Okay, thank you.
Because
Canto Bight, take it away, Brian.
Because fundamentally speaking, you're not wrong.
Thank you.
Fundamentally,
Oh my God, did we get that on tape? Did we get that on tape? Okay.
Edit it later, don't worry.
Oh yeah. I mean, this nobody's ever gonna hear this part. I actually agree with you. No, fundamentally speaking, you're absolutely right in that from a storytelling standpoint, Canto Bight doesn't really add anything because it's ultimately a no-win scenario that goes nowhere because it, instead of doing what they want to do in getting a code breaker that'll put them into the main ship that will disable the tracker for light speed.
Yeah.
That they're trying to do, they basically give away the entire story of what they're actually doing. I mean, I think this is one of the things where a lot of it comes down to plot mechanics. And I feel like a lot of this is based on the plot mechanics of the type of story that Rian Johnson wanted to tell, which is basically he's telling the story of a ship lost at sea.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where it's like basically, okay, I'm basically waiting to die. That's basically what the Resistance is doing at that point after they find out that the First Order can track them through light speed. Is that they're doing what they can to survive. There's not a lot of hope for how they can survive.
There's a lot of hope throughout this entire movie. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Does it not feel like there's like this endless stream of like hopelessness going through like this? There's this thread of hopelessness going throughout the whole movie.
Okay,
that's been going on for the whole trilogy. A New Hope, about two siblings, brother and sister.
I'm just saying that Last Jedi particularly, like there's like this thread of like hopelessness going through, and there's no, you know what I mean? There's almost,
yeah. I feel that.
It feels like it's like, well, what would be the point of doing this, going from A to B and doing that and doing, it's just, I find that aspect of the movie very frustrating personally.
Okay,
but that's just me,
and I completely understand that. I do get why that is frustrating because of the fact that it's not what we're used to in Star Wars, and it's like it's another aspect of the movie that we're not used to. Yeah, in Star Wars, and
there's like how many people left in the Resistance at the end of the movie, Daniel?
I think it's like 10 is all that was in the Millennium Falcon. Well,
enough to make it on to the Millennium Falcon, evidently.
So actually, and that's a good question because we believe that the Resistance is what's on the Millennium Falcon, but it's in the book as well. It's not in the movie. Where is Snap Wexley the whole time, right? Because he's a big character in The Force Awakens. Not a big character, but he's obviously a fairly strong character.
See the dude with the beard?
Yeah.
He's always
he's J.J. Abrams' friend.
Yeah,
he's a friend of J.J. Abrams. J.J. puts him in all his movies. That guy.
Exactly.
That guy. I know what guy you're talking about.
But he was completely left out of this movie. In the book, it's mentioned. Poe's like, where's Snap Wexley when I need him? Because it's at the scene in the book. It's at the scene where Poe's about to take over the ship. With put Holdo, and the pilots are gonna put them at gunpoint in the hangar, and he's thinking to himself because the pilots that are with him, with the exception of the Abednego guy, the alien dude, he doesn't know the other pilots, so he's kind of just going on a limb hoping that they're gonna side with him, which they do. But in the book, he's like, where's Snap Wexley at this point when I need him? and he's like, well, he's off on a mission doing what he needs to do to help the Resistance. So, to say the Resistance on the Millennium Falcon is not necessarily a true and accurate statement. That now, the main people of obviously Finn and Poe and Rey and Leia and Chewbacca being on the Falcon, yes, they're the main people of the Resistance, but that's not it. I mean, they sent out a signal trying to get more people to come join them at Crate. Obviously, that didn't work. But there is a lot more Resistance out there. It's just, again, there might be little pockets here and there, just kind of like going back to, A New Hope, and even, into the Rebels and the Rebels, where there's pockets of Resistance here and there, and they band together. But, it's not just 10 or 12 on the Millennium Falcon. So
Yeah, I mean, I think this is part of where it's tricky for Rian Johnson to be telling a larger story within the context of this huge saga that has been going over for 40 years versus basically making a movie. And it's like this idea that he has is the idea that the First Order's just about to wipe out, quite literally, the main part of the Resistance, and basically win the war in the end in this movie. That's a very real danger. Trying to make that suspenseful, trying to do something that will give all of the characters something to do, I think that's a tricky thing. And do I necessarily... And that, I think, is ultimately the big thing about Canto Bight and that whole sequence is, it gives Finn and Rose something to do.
That's the
gives
thing.
Poe a little bit of something to do because he's basically in charge of it. But it does also serve a bit more of a purpose because you see a little bit more of the people that the Resistance can recruit in terms of the oppressed versus the people who are making money off of the war. And that's one of the things that I actually like about this movie. It reminded me of some of my favorite things about Attack of the Clones, where you see this larger part of the world and a larger part of the Star Wars universe that we don't necessarily see before. And one of the things, and did I necessarily feel like I needed to see, oh, well, where are all the fighters and weapons coming from? Where's the First Order and the Resistance getting this? I never necessarily needed to see this, but it adds texture and it adds a bit more depth to the larger universe, and that's one of the things I like about it. Is it a silly sequence? Yes. Does it ultimately serve a larger narrative purpose in the larger sense of the universe? No, it doesn't. That's true. But I don't necessarily think that that's ultimately what the point of it was.
So for me, I kind of enjoy the Canto Bight scene, but I also compare it, and I've heard a lot of people compare it to kind of the pod racer. Now, you can say the Fathier scene versus the pod racing scene. But to me, like, Canto Bight was, the pod racing scene in Phantom Menace was awful. I mean, it was literally there just so they could win money to buy the parts they need to get off the planet and go home happy. And this scene here was a little bit more in depth in terms of they're there to get a code breaker to get off the planet, to get onto a space shuttle, to turn off the trackers so that way they can escape and not live happily ever after, but get on to the next part of the movie in episode 9. But I thought it was excellent character development because what we've seen at this moment in time with Finn is he's trying to run away. He's trying to run away the whole time. Force Awakens, he's trying to run away from the First Order. Even the beginning of The Last Jedi, he's trying to run away from the First Order, getting in the escape pod. And that's how he meets Rose. And we don't get a lot of Rose at first, and that's where we understand Rose, more of, she's excited to see the Fathiers because her and her sister that died, Paige, their planet was taken over by the First Order. And, their planet was destroyed by the First Order. And they both love the Fathiers, and they want to go there. So you kind of get a background of her planet, where they come from, the oppression of the First Order, and again, choking out, just like the Empire did, planets. But then you get like the rich scene of, Canto Bight, all these rich people, casinos, here's where the money is. How do they get that money? Obviously they're sitting here wasting this money on playing games. Where are they getting this money from? And so I felt like it was a good character development of Finn. It was kind of the turning point, and I think the turning point for Finn was like he's so entrapped and so enthused with this planet and the casino and all the rich and the glorious luster of it all. And she's telling her story to him while he's looking to the Fathiers, and he's seeing the child boy get whipped by the master, or almost whipped by the master that's whipping the Fathier. And I think that kind of like triggered him, like, you know, here's where he's trying to run away from everything, but the reality is he never could run away from everything. Because if he runs away from the First Order, he's going to be running into either a low-life system or he's going to go to a political, or to a rich place like Canto Bight and still be disappointed with it. So I thought it was good character development on that. It kind of triggered him. So I think in the next movie, just like the end of, actually the end of this movie, instead of breaking off from trying to destroy the cannon, he's going head on into it. And it's Rose that saves him. He's finally triggered that he wants to stay and fight. He wants to do what he can, and I think we'll get more of that in episode 9. And then you get a little, Rose's character is developed a little bit here. I don't think it's developed enough, and I was kind of a little bit let down with her character in the movie. There's a book that her and her sister in called Cobalt Squadron. Hey, there's always a book. But I think their characters were developed so much in that book, and I read that before the movie came out, that when I saw her in the movie, I was kind of like, oh, this is it. And so I was a little bit let down with her character, although she did have some development. I felt like she was there literally to aim for the Asian market, like literally just like Donnie Chen from Rogue One. Yeah. Because The Force Awakens was such a bust in China and overseas that for Rogue One they purposely added in an Asian background culture with Donnie Chen to help improvise that. And I think this is kind of the same thing here. The reason we have Kelly Marie Tran was the same concept, is let's add in a diverse character from that culture to try and help sell the movie into the overseas market. And I'm all for it. I mean, I'm all for, doing stuff like that. I mean, we got to be a lot more diverse in our movies and more culturalized in our movies. And, I've kind of enjoyed having more women than the men from the original trilogies. But I felt like her character was poorly developed. And once again, the movie bombed overseas. I mean, it did better, but it still bombed. I mean, and the all reality is they're trying to do something, but it is unsuccessful so far of 2 of the 3 movies, overseas.
And the thing is, it's like I don't necessarily. I think it's hard to believe that it would just be it, because when you put it that way, it feels very cynical that you have Donnie Yen and
Kelly Marie Tran.
Yeah, in the movie solely to try to cater to this particular market. It does make you wonder, though, what it does feel like Star Wars is a uniquely American phenomenon. I don't know traditionally. I mean, I know there are stories about how premieres and stuff like that have done. I know people around the globe absolutely love Star Wars, but I hardly, because I mean Donnie Yen is absolutely awesome in Rogue One. I can't imagine the film without him. He's absolutely right for that role. Yeah, I mean I do think that the point of Canto Bight is it's primarily plot mechanics. It's primarily to give Finn and Rose something to build up their characters that we wouldn't have necessarily been able to get if just having them on the spaceships. Yeah, I think it does. I do agree that I do think it is something that builds their characters well, and I think it is something that sets up more what we're gonna see in episode 9 than really having a whole heck of a lot to do in episode 8.
I'll just quickly say, because it's getting late and Ron's falling asleep. I'll just quickly say that even though I'm someone that didn't necessarily love the movie, a lot of people that don't like the Canto Bight scene at all. For me, I really didn't have too much of an issue with it. And for me, I kind of felt like the trajectory of it was some character development. It was a little transparent in that, but fine. And also, the Benicio del Toro scene where they're showing, where they buy the weapons and stuff like that. That's kind of where the trajectory was going of it. And so I was fine with that. I mean, the second time around, that's the scene where I used the bathroom you know. But but you know, I didn't have too much of an issue with it as much as other people did.
Mm-hmm. I think we basically said a lot of what we need to say about that. So let's move quickly to the writer and director Rian Johnson, who previously directed feature film was Brick, The Brothers Bloom, and Looper. This was his first big attempt at a big blockbuster. I mean, Looper was his first stab at science fiction, but on a much smaller scale. And I do think that I love what he did with this movie. It's like, yeah, there are things that I can point to that it's like, this wasn't quite as good. We didn't talk about what feels like a forced relationship between Finn and Rose at the end, where it's like she tells him that she loves him, and that's basically why she saves him, and it's like that feels a bit forced. It doesn't necessarily feel like something that the movie earned, and that was, we'll see how that plays out at the in episode 9. Overall, I really like his vision of the movie. I do think there are some interesting choices they made. I like the choices they made for the most part. I like that he sort of he doesn't just rely on templates from the original trilogy. I feel like there are some things they found they was able to bring in from the prequels that would serve a purpose to the story that he's telling here, and that's one of the things that I really like about it. I am interested to see what he will be able to do without having the lofty expectations of telling a story with Luke and Leia and all these iconic characters. I do hope that he's able to have the freedom to tell a story that is not tangentially connected to this larger 9-movie saga that J.J. Abrams will be concluding next year. And I'm still, I know a lot of people are kind of hesitant on him doing a trilogy after Last Jedi, and I get it. I will say that I understand why. I feel like the hesitation with what he did with these iconic characters shouldn't necessarily be carried over when he'll be able to do original characters. That's sort of my feelings on Rian Johnson.
Ron, you want to go so you can go back to sleep?
God. It is so late.
Yeah, just keep going. Just keep going. Push through.
Yeah.
We're not too far from the end here.
We're
need
not
a Red
far.
Bull? I got the Red Bull. You need a Red Bull?
I might need a Red Bull. I mean, you mentioned the 3 movies he'd done prior to Last Jedi.
Yeah.
And I realized the only one I'd seen is the Brothers Bloom. I tried to watch Looper.
I thought I had shown you Brick.
No, you haven't shown me Brick.
How would I not shown you Brick?
Why are you
Because I
facepalming,
had that
Daniel?
movie for like 3 months. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Brick?
Oh, it's Daniel's fault. I tried to watch Looper, and I fell asleep probably because I started it way too late.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
So I never saw Brick because of Daniel, and
But I've had Brick for years. The idea that I never showed you Brick is kind of mind-boggling to me because I've always loved it.
have you?
Yeah, I love it because of the fact that it's basically a film noir story, detective story set in a high school.
Oh,
with a high
neat.
school setting. It's really interesting.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. So as it turns out, the only other movie of his I'd seen was Brothers Bloom, which was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It did have some good performances from who's it? Mark Ruffalo, Adrian Brody,
And Rachel Weisz.
Rachel Weisz.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was the girl in the movie. Yeah, and I thought, when I think about that in comparison to Last Jedi, I see a lot of similarities. Again, competently directed and acted and all that and everything, but it was a little odd, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess on purpose. I don't know. I don't know. I apologize. I'm falling asleep over here. This is super late and
Yeah, this is really late for us.
this is
to be doing this.
yeah. So
We'll keep it rolling. Are you done, Ryan?
basically, my thoughts on Rian Johnson are that he is a competent director. Again, these are all things that came across to me in that documentary. Dave, did you see the documentary? Or
I did not yet.
okay, it's actually really interesting watch.
Yeah.
I'm glad Daniel made us all watch it. Because Daniel's a freak and he had the movie like how many days before because you had it streaming.
Yeah, I got it streaming. It came out on the 13th of March if you paid for the streaming, so I got that. But the movie didn't come out until like the 27th or something.
Yeah, the movie the Blu-ray didn't come out until the 27th. That's when me and Brian finally got a good look at it. But and Rian Johnson seems like a genuinely good guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, from what I saw of the documentary, what I heard of the commentary, but I do think that some of the choices, some of the decisions were just made for the sake of subverting our expectations or for shock value. So a lot of the choices, a lot of decisions did not sit well with me. They still don't. I still have a lot of issues. I may very well be the one in this room with the most issues with the movie. I'm actually now realizing this. I may very well be. I may have more issues with the movie than Dave does.
Yeah, I think you do. I mean, yeah.
I think so, but yeah. So I have my issues with the movie, but at the same time, it's just a movie.
Yes.
We don't need to kill each other over this. We're all still gonna be friends after this.
Yeah. I mean, I think the way we've, and I do think the way we've.
This has been very therapeutic, actually.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean that's part of the reason.
This has been very therapeutic.
This is group therapy for
Yes.
each other, for us to talk out our differences and to,
Yeah.
not quite an intervention. It's not quite the same thing, but the
Yeah.
fact of the matter is, it's good to be able to talk about these things. And,
Yeah.
Dave, do you have anything to say about Rian Johnson?
Just quick. I'm working from some notes here, so it'll be quick. I know we didn't talk about Finn and Rose, but I just thought it was interesting that the one thing that people that didn't like the movie, like that they were disappointed and didn't happen, versus a lot of the stuff that they were disappointed because it did happen, was Finn not dying at the end. It really felt like if they had done that, they would have won some people over. Because it felt like, and to me, I thought he was gone. Based off the music and what was happening, I thought, and when they didn't, I felt I did kind of feel that was a cop out. But when I was looking at some of the reactions online, it was pretty strongly that way. I haven't seen Brick either. I know I need to, but I did see Looper, and I actually love Looper. But I can definitely tell there's some storytelling clumsiness in Looper. So I kind of see that here as well. When they talked about Rian Johnson doing this movie, I was like, sweet, because of how much I love Looper. So it was weird for me to come away disappointed from it because I had such a good experience with that movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you're a storyteller and you're having to do lots of articles and interviews trying to explain yourself, which he has had to do probably at Disney's behest in some cases, I do think that probably means you missed something somewhere as a storyteller. You just didn't connect emotionally somewhere. I feel as if sometimes he is sort of Zack Snyder-esque in his storytelling. I mentioned that. But ultimately, I kind of feel like his talents were wasted. I kind of feel like I almost wish like that the last scene of this movie was at the end of the movie that's going to be after 9. Because they're doing. They did the Rogue One, and now they're doing Solo. Supposedly going to do another movie, after 9. So I almost feel like that movie.
They're giving Rian Johnson his own trilogy.
His own trilogy. I'm just saying, like, whatever that, it's supposed to be an Obi-Wan movie or whatever, But I'm just saying, if they had given him maybe that movie to sort of like be a coda to this last trilogy and be something different that then initiated some sort of a new trilogy somewhere else and kind of reset your palette for something else, I think he would have been a little bit better used there rather than here, and so I almost feel like his talents were wasted by doing this middle movie, to be entirely honest. But yeah, so that's just kind of how I feel there.
I can see that. Do you have anything to add, Daniel?
Yeah, so, I personally thoroughly enjoyed it. Most of the storytelling, overall, I'd say like 90-95% was excellent. Yeah, there's letdowns here and there, obviously. I think the big issue that, as I look at all the movies again, as I've watched all of them a number of times, obviously we all have, but, so you have J.J. Abrams started a new trilogy, and he had a story. He wrote the story for The Force Awakens. He had his perspective of where he thought the story was going to go. I thought he was going to write more of 9, and then what he did, and actually from what I'm reading, is he didn't have actually hardly anything in 8. He didn't have hardly anything written in 8. That it was pretty much all Rian Johnson and the other, who's the other writer in this one, because it wasn't just Johnson.
Well, no, Rian Johnson is the only credit writer.
Okay, all right. I thought there, but anyway, so it's to me is it's hard to pick up in the middle and you got to copy out, not copy out, but you got to go with the flow of what somebody else had created while still trying to create your own idea, your own movie where you want it or where you think it should go, and then at the same time you're also handing it off to somebody else who was originally Colin Trevorrow, who's now been dropped, and obviously JJ's finishing it off. But I think it's hard when you're trying to write a middle movie of a trilogy, and you're trying to incorporate the previous movie, but you're also trying to lead up to what the next movie is going to be. So I think there was some, a little bit of difficulty there. I'm thoroughly excited after seeing this movie, though, about him having his own trilogy, which, I found out about a month or so ago that he's writing the trilogy. He's completely writing the whole trilogy, but he's only directing the first movie so far.
Yeah.
He's from what I've read, he's not signed on to direct the other 2, that he's just writing all 3. So, I actually like that idea of him writing it out an entire trilogy, so you get to, the beginning, middle, the end, as well as the beginning, middle, end of each movie, while not directing it all, but you at least get to do the entire story arc and storytelling. So
yeah,
I'm excited about that. I think, obviously the biggest letdown and why some people really despise him in this movie is probably a lot of the same reasons why people despise R.A. Salvatore, who wrote the Vector Prime from the New Jedi Order, the original book, or the first book in the trilogy, or in the series, where he kills off Chewbacca, and so many people are in uproar about Chewbacca being killed off. But in that book, at some point in time, we've been going on and on with those books that you had to kill off a main character, and Chewbacca was kind of the only person that made sense to, and all the death threats he got after that. And I kind of feel like Rian Johnson's in the same boat where, he wrote off, he killed off Luke Skywalker, a huge iconic character in this movie, and we all knew that Han Solo was going to die. Harrison Ford wanted to die back in Empire Strikes Back, so it was only fitting. Nobody was upset. Nobody was, obviously people were sad, but nobody was like gonna kill, want to kill J.J. Abrams for writing him off, because Harrison Ford wanted to write himself off a long time ago. Yeah. So that was fitting. But some people not seeing Luke passing this movie, which I kind of didn't really see it either in this one. So a lot of people have hard feelings against Rian Johnson doing that, but I think he's a competent director, writer, and it was overall well done in my mind.
Well, I mean, there are a couple of other sections I had, but I feel like for myself, obviously we're all really tired, and I do feel like with what everybody's saying here, we're at the point where we should be wrapping up. I will start off. And,
just one question though.
Okay.
When Luke disappears into the Force, why doesn't his hand just go like clunk onto the ground?
Your guess is as good as mine.
I'm just.
It would be a little too comedically absurd at that moment.
Okay, because
kind of take you out of the moment.
this has been bothering me.
Yeah.
So.
I don't know.
His hand was resting on the rock, so it could have just fallen. We didn't see it.
I maybe but I want answers. Damn it.
Okay.
I'm delirious. I'm sorry.
That's fine. That's fine. I mean,
it's 1 o'clock in the frickin' morning. Yeah. I'm delirious. Okay.
Which is why we're wrapping it up. I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's like I like the way that this is gone. I like the fact that this is. It's felt like the culmination of something for myself with regards to discussing this movie with everybody.
Now we're all going to go out in the backyard and have a big fisticuffs with one
Yeah.
another, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Actually, we're just all gonna be beating up you, Ron, because you're the one that didn't like the movie the most.
Would that be earned though, Dave? Would that be organic?
Oh, God.
Brian, I think we won Dave over, so now it's 3 against 1. So that's 2-2.
No, I first of all, I want to thank all of you guys for. I'm glad we were able to make the time for this, even though it's really, really late and probably later than we should ever record one of these again.
Well, I have no choice because I live here, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I do want to thank Daniel and Dave for taking the time from their lives for being able to make this possible, even though it's really, really late at night. I will close out my personal thoughts with I feel some of my favorite discussions about Star Wars and about movies in general have come as a result of The Last Jedi, and there's so much that I feel like I could bring up that, but I won't because of the fact that it's really late, and it would just keep us going for at least another half hour or so. But the fact of the matter is, I absolutely... I love where this movie left off. I love the possibilities of what could be coming up. I feel like while there are definitely some things that there are some things that I feel like Rian Johnson could have probably done better. I also feel like he kind of got a bad rap from a lot of fans for what he did do differently, and I don't think he gets quite the credit he deserves for bringing a unique voice to this universe. Basically, bring something new into this the storytelling in terms of the way he tells the story, and I think that's one of the things that I love about this movie. It's a stark contrast for me with what we got in the prequel trilogy, where there are things I will defend in the prequels for always, and I'll always enjoy the prequels to a certain extent because of the fact that I just love the Star Wars universe, but I feel like there are far more egregious mistakes in that trilogy than what Rian Johnson has here in the Last Jedi, and I feel like Star Wars is fresh. I feel like there's still room for original storytelling and original thinking in this universe, and that's something that I'm always going to be grateful for, regardless of who the filmmaker is, regardless of whether I like every idea or not, or whether I feel like every idea is earned or not. I feel like what Rian Johnson did in this movie was special. You know, I think we've certainly brought a lot of viewpoints in tonight to show that there are some things that we can definitely dispute. I think there are definitely some things that we can criticize about the film, but also I think this is probably some of the most civil dialogue I think I've seen about the film to date, and if we can at least bring that much to the discussion on that movie, it's going to be a win-win, regardless of whether everybody agrees about the movie or not.
Ron,
Oh.
back to class.
So closing thoughts, is that what you're looking
we're
for?
We're basically doing closing thoughts.
Okay. Well, my initial thoughts and opinions and feelings on the movie remain the same. I don't quite think it's as extraordinary as I think Brian thinks it is. I think it's a deeply flawed movie. I think it's, again, made by reasonably talented people and people who know what they're doing. But it's a movie that just got bogged down, I think, with too much clunky writing and plot development, and it was again just not my cup of tea. But that's fine. It's just a movie,
Mm-hmm.
and God knows there's going to be more Star Wars movies in the pipeline that I'll be able to hopefully enjoy more than this one. Solo looks really good. Then we've got, and I do have hope for episode 9 with J.J. Abrams back at the helm, but again, I'm not as excited going into episode 9 as I was going into episode 8. For obvious reasons that I've already talked about this evening. So anyway, I don't mean to be so negative that I just bring everybody down, but that's kind of like what my part in the discussion here was for tonight. I was here to just kind of be the counterpoint to to the people who do think this movie is something special, and I love that people think this movie is special. I love that Star Wars is getting this new. I love that there's getting Star Wars is getting this new breath in it, and it's a new audience. Opening up to a new audience and all that. And again, I apologize. I'm really tired, but I think I'm going to give this to. Who should I give this to?
Whoever's ready.
Whoever's ready with their closing thoughts.
Yeah, okay.
Dave,
Yeah.
take it away.
Yeah. I'll just again work for my notes here, which I didn't. I think I basically said everything, but I mentioned before. I definitely feel like there are many transparent elements to this movie, and I feel like it was kind of self-indulgent in a number of places, just too much, and that just kind of came through. It just kind of made the experience not that great for me. Kind of echoing what Ron said. I mean, I was really excited coming into this movie, but even with J.J. Abrams back at the helm, I'm not necessarily excited about this next one. I'm almost kind of Star Wars'd out right now.
I know how you feel. I know trust me. I know. No, I know the feeling.
And it's like if they don't do another one, it's fine. And that's there's a lot of people that are like, oh, I hate Star Wars. I never want to see Star Wars. It's not like that. It's much more like it's like, okay, we're good, guys. I got some movies I like.
Are we getting too many movies? That's a subject for another podcast, maybe.
Right. But it's also, if you're going to divide up your audience like this, if you're going to kind of be this divisive with your audience, just because you're trying to inject new things, there's a risk there. But I know they bought Lucasfilm for like what, $4 billion or something like that. Yeah. And so when you make that big of a purchase, you're going to want to get not just a 1x or 2x return. You're going to want to get a 5, 6, maybe 7x return over 10 years. And I'm not entirely sure if you're going to be able to do that. You're pissing off large swaths of your audience, but we'll just have to see. One of the things I did want to mention that I didn't mention before was that there's the BBC version of Sherlock, which I'm not sure if a lot of people in this room have watched. But you
mean the one with Benedict Cumberbatch?
Yes,
or?
yes.
Yeah.
When you hear Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss, the writers for that, talk about it, they talk about saying everything is canon. The previous movies, the books, everything, and they try to work that all into the BBC version of Sherlock. And so it would have been interesting if they had tried that with this movie itself. To be able to say everything is canon, we're going to try to do everything. Or even just this like next prequel series. It would have been interesting to take the extended universe and try to tweak, rework that, and kind of put everything together and tell a really big epic type story. But that's not what we got. But I find myself thinking along those lines, to maybe for another trilogy or whatever. But I mean, that probably won't happen. But it's interesting to think that way for me. I think the last thing is that as someone who wants to be a storyteller one day, I've always wondered if it's possible to betray your audience. Is that possible, especially if it's your story? But I think part of what is so abstract about why some people don't like this movie is because they feel betrayed, and that's hard to kind of put your finger on, and it's hard to explain. And so, when I think about some of my other writers, they're my favorite writers, like Rebecca Sugar, who does Steven Universe, or J.K. Rowling, who did Harry Potter. They all talked about being influenced by the outside for their story, and changing their story because of the way that fans connected with maybe a particular character, a particular story moment so emotionally. And I do think there's some value to that, and so I'm wondering if being so self-indulgent is really going to serve you, in the long run. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I didn't hate the movie as much as Ron. I didn't love it as much as Brian. And it definitely taught me some lessons about storytelling in the future. So and we'll just have to one thing that is interesting is like what's going to happen with Nine. What's going to happen with Nine? Carrie Fisher. What's going to happen with Nine? Story wise, are they going to try to go back for what the fans want, which is a little bit more backstory? Or are they going to try to move forward with this sort of a new style? I mean, it's just very interesting what's going to happen there. I'm not excited about it, but I am interested.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way to put it. Well put, Dave.
So that's me. I'm done.
Okay.
So I remember as soon as I walked out of the theater, we actually Brian, Meredith, and Ronnie were walking in to watch their showtime. Brian for his second time, Meredith I think for his second time, Ronnie for his first time, and. Yep. And I remember I said, Ronnie, you're going to love it. This is a great movie. And I said that. And I still believe it. I still believe that Ronnie should love it, but he doesn't. That's okay. But I remember texting Brian, actually, I think it was the next morning. I said, Brian, did we just see, like, the next best almost Empire Strikes Back as far as, like, story goes and even not so much the visual effects, because this is by far better visual effects, but just the interaction of the characters within the movie and the subplots that were going on. And I still to me think that this is not better than Empire Strikes Back on my list, but it storytelling wise overall, with the flaws that it does have, to me not many, and Empire Strikes Back has lots of flaws as well, but I still feel like this one is pretty darn close to Empire Strikes Back in terms of story, where the movie is in the trilogy and where it is going at the trilogy. Although in Empire, it left us on a little bit of a different note. Is Darth Vader really Luke Skywalker's father? In this one, or a few cliffhangers we have, is Rey really from nobody? From parents from nobody on Jakku, which I don't believe that's true.
What will happen with Broom Boy?
I think Broom Boy.
We're all in suspense about that story.
I think Broom Boy is there just to show you that everybody can connect and tap into the Force. That it's not just the Jedi or just Jedi blood. But I mean, I'm still excited about this movie. I still love it every time I watch it. I still get goosebumps at almost all the same scenes. I mean, Yoda popping up and so real lifelike, just like in Empire and Return of the Jedi. I'm excited where we're going with the next one, even though we don't know where it is. And I'll kind of leave on this thing as I was reading an article just yesterday, as a matter of fact, about, in The Force Awakens, we have the vision, Rey has the vision of everything she saw. It started off with Luke and Vader fighting on Cloud City, and then it turned into the Jedi Temple falling, and she's kind of rolling away from it, and seeing on fire and Luke there. But then you see the Knights of Ren over a bunch of bodies in a rain sequence, and then Kylo Ren goes to attack her, or they fight in the forest. And it was an interesting article that I read that somebody said, she saw the past, she saw the present, and she saw the future. And in that vision, what was the past, what is the future, and what's the present? We don't know. I mean, we know that Cloud City was the past. We know that the temple burning up and Luke being sad, with R2 was the past. We know that now, but and the future, one of the things was them fighting in on Starkiller base.
Yeah.
And in the article says, was the future also the Knights of Ren, that now Kylo Ren is the supreme leader? Does he have, what happened to the Jedi that he took from Luke's academy? Is he not training them in the background somewhere? And now the next part of the movie is Rey training up a few people to take on the Knights of Ren. So it's just kind of like ending on we don't know what the past, we know some of the past, but we don't know all the future. And so, we have no idea what's going to happen in Episode 9 because of the way they ended. So, I'm excited to see where it goes, and hopefully I'm not let down with how it'll finish. And there's gonna be a ton more Star Wars movies, so there's gonna be a lot of ups and downs in them. So we'll see where it goes. I'm excited at the moment though. So
yeah, and all of these summations have basically shown just how much we weren't able to cover tonight. I mean, we could, if we could have covered everything, this podcast would be about 4 hours long, and none of us are really up for that right now. But the fact of the matter is, I think we covered a lot of ground. I think we had some interesting discussions here. I think we all got our opinions out in a way that is respectful of not only those opinions that we hold, but also those that our friends hold. And I would like to thank once again Ron, Dave, and Daniel for taking part in this, for being a part of the Sonic Cinema podcast. It's always great to be able to talk to them about movies, and I hope, and I don't think this will certainly not be the last time any of them are on here. I'm really grateful for their friendship and all of the experiences we've had with movies, and I'm looking forward to the ones we have in the future. With that being said, on behalf of Ronnie Haynes, Daniel Green, and David Miles, thank you very much for joining us. This is Brian Scuttle for the Sonic Cinema podcast, which you can listen to at sonic-cinema.com. Also, check out patreon.com/Sonic Cinema. And thank you very much. Until next time.